The sun set in Auradon, casting a golden glow over the gleaming towers of the royal palace. It was a night that would go down in history, the grand celebration that promised to unite the realm like never before. The streets buzzed with excitement, the air thick with the scent of fresh flowers and the sound of music echoing from every corner. Nobles, dignitaries, and commoners alike gathered to witness the event that symbolized harmony among the realms. Chloe stood near the palace gates, her delicate features set in a composed smile as she greeted the guests arriving at the event. Her gown shimmered with silver embroidery, a representation of the calm and order she brought wherever she went. The daughter of Queen Cinderella and King Charming, Chloe was the embodiment of grace and responsibility. She had spent her life preparing for moments like this, occasions that demanded her poise and perfect control. She nodded to familiar faces, exchanging polite words of welcome. Her blue eyes scanned the crowd, ensuring everything was proceeding smoothly. To Chloe, order was everything, and this night had to be flawless. But across the courtyard, under the shadow of a large oak tree, stood someone who couldn't have cared less about perfect moments or flawless celebrations. Red lounged casually, her arms crossed, her fiery red hair a stark contrast to the dark leather jacket she wore over a tattered crimson shirt. The rebellious daughter of the Queen of Hearts, Red had never been one to follow rules or care about appearances. She smirked at the prim and proper attendees, her eyes rolling at the pretentiousness of the whole affair. Why her mother had insisted she attend this momentous celebration, Red had no idea. She was much more comfortable causing a little chaos in Wonderland than mingling with the upper crust of Auradon. Look at them, so stiff and proper, Red muttered to herself as she watched Chloe flit from one group to another. Bet they wouldn't last a day in Wonderland. Chloe, on the other hand, was very aware of Red's presence. How could she not be? Red was the living embodiment of everything Chloe sought to avoid: unpredictability, disorder, and defiance. She caught glimpses of Red leaning against the tree, looking like she'd rather be anywhere else. It unsettled Chloe. It was clear that the only thing they had in common was that they both belonged to royal families. But beyond that, they were polar opposites. As the night's festivities continued, the grand ballroom filled with laughter and applause. King Ben, the ruler of Auradon, stood at the head of the banquet table, preparing to make his toast. Guests eagerly awaited his words, ready to celebrate the peace that had reigned in Auradon for so many years. Everything seemed perfect, but then, without warning, the sky above darkened. A low rumble echoed through the air, silencing the crowd. Chloe looked up, her eyes narrowing in confusion as thick clouds gathered overhead. The musicians stopped playing, their melodies fading into the tense silence. Red, sensing the shift, stood upright. The hairs on the back of her neck prickled with the same instinct she always had before trouble erupted. Her sharp eyes darted around the courtyard, scanning for the source of the disturbance. In a moment, the peaceful night was shattered. A sudden gust of wind tore through the celebration, sending flowers and decorations flying. Gasps and murmurs of panic rippled through the crowd. Chloe's heart raced as she instinctively stepped toward the palace, seeking safety for the guests. But her mind whirled. This was no ordinary storm. Meanwhile, Red's heart quickened, but not out of fear. Chaos, it was something she knew all too well. Her instincts kicked in, and she smirked, recognizing the thrill of the unknown. Amidst the chaos, their eyes met for the first time that night. Chloe's gaze held a mix of worry and determination. She was already planning her next move, thinking about how to restore order, how to protect the guests. But Red's eyes flashed with curiosity and challenge. She was no stranger to chaos, but something about this felt different. As the winds howled louder and the skies darkened even more, they both knew one thing for certain: this was only the beginning. The celebration that had promised to bring peace and unity was about to descend into a storm of uncertainty. And though they couldn't know it yet, the fates of Red and Chloe would soon become intertwined in ways neither of them could have imagined. Auradon, the shining kingdom of harmony, was on the brink of something far greater than either of them had anticipated, and they were about to be thrust right into the heart of it. The gusting winds that had disrupted the celebration turned fierce. With each passing second, the evening sky above Auradon darkened into an ominous swirl of storm clouds. Lanterns, once glowing with soft light, flickered and went out. The once lively music was replaced by the sharp whistle of the wind and the growing whispers of fear from the guests. Chloe stood frozen for a moment, her mind reeling. This was unlike anything she had ever experienced. Auradon was supposed to be a place of peace, and such chaotic interruptions simply didn't happen here. She quickly regained her composure, turning to the crowd that had started to back away toward the palace. "Everyone, please remain calm," Chloe called out, her voice clear and authoritative despite the growing tension in the air. "We'll find shelter inside the palace until we understand what's happening." She gestured for the palace guards to begin guiding the guests to safety, her mind already racing for solutions. Whatever this was, it wasn't natural, and it had to be stopped. But just as Chloe took a step toward the palace to organize further, she felt a firm tug on her arm, pulling her back into the chaos. "Hold up, princess," Red's voice drawled, her sharp tone cutting through the confusion. "Running inside isn't gonna fix whatever this is." Red had appeared from the edge of the courtyard, her stance relaxed but her eyes alert, scanning the chaotic scene unfolding around them. She yanked Chloe aside just in time as a large decorative banner tore free from the wall and whipped through the air, crashing into where Chloe had been standing only moments before. Chloe wrenched her arm free, glaring at Red. "What do you think you're doing?" she demanded. "You need to get your head out of that perfect little rulebook of yours," Red interrupted, stepping forward and pointing toward the darkening sky. "Look around. This isn't some storm you can ride out in the palace. Something's coming, and hiding inside isn't going to stop it." Chloe frowned, brushing back her disheveled hair. As much as she hated to admit it, Red had a point. This was no ordinary weather. The gusts were too deliberate, the dark clouds seemed to circle as though something was controlling them. But working with Red, of all people, they could hardly stand in the same courtyard without tension simmering between them. "I don't need advice from someone who thrives on chaos," Chloe snapped, her irritation flaring as she glanced at the fiery-haired troublemaker. Red raised an eyebrow, a smirk tugging at the corner of her lips. "Chaos is a little more interesting than your stiff, polished world, isn't it?" she teased. "But fine, princess, you want to play hero? Be my guest." She stepped aside with a flourish, gesturing toward the increasingly frantic crowd as they fled into the palace. Chloe's gaze narrowed, but before she could respond, the ground beneath them trembled slightly. A deep, unnatural rumble reverberated through the courtyard, and both girls instinctively turned toward the palace's grand entrance. The enormous double doors swung shut with a thunderous bang, as though sealed by some unseen force. The air grew colder, the darkness pressing in on them. The celebration had devolved into panic as nobles rushed for shelter, only to find the palace impenetrable. For the first time, Chloe's certainty faltered. This wasn't just a storm, this was something far worse. Her gaze flicked back to Red, who stood, arms crossed, watching her with a mixture of challenge and curiosity. Chloe sighed, her breath visible in the chilling air. "What do you suggest then?" she asked reluctantly, realizing she couldn't tackle this alone. Red grinned. "Now you're asking the right questions." She stepped closer, surveying the courtyard. "This kind of magic, it's not Auradon style. I'd bet my life that whatever's causing this came from outside the kingdom. And I don't think it'll stop at a ruined party." Chloe's eyes widened slightly at Red's assessment. While she had always been aware of Red's rebellious nature, she hadn't realized how sharp her instincts could be. It was unsettling to think that Red could read the situation more clearly than she could. But there wasn't time to dwell on it. "Fine," Chloe said, nodding toward the darkened sky. "We need to find the source of this disturbance before it gets any worse." Red smirked. "Now you're talking. But first, we need a way in there." She gestured toward the palace doors, still firmly sealed. "And something tells me knocking politely isn't going to work." Chloe frowned, looking toward the heavy doors. She had always relied on her ability to navigate problems with grace and logic, but this required a different kind of approach. Magic, unpredictable and wild, was not her specialty. However, there was someone she knew who might be able to help. "The Mad Hatter's son," Chloe muttered, half to herself. "If anyone can make sense of this, it's him." Red raised an eyebrow. "Hatter's kid? You know him?" Chloe nodded. "I've met him a few times at royal functions. He's unconventional, to say the least. But he knows more about chaotic magic than anyone in Auradon." Red grinned wider. "I like him already." Together, they began making their way through the courtyard, dodging the remnants of the celebration as decorations and streamers were torn from their places by the unnatural winds. Despite their differences, Chloe and Red moved with purpose, both keenly aware that something much larger was at play. And as the dark clouds above swirled ever closer, it became clear that whatever this was, it wouldn't be easily stopped. Chloe stole a glance at Red as they walked, her mind still processing the strangeness of working alongside her. Red's wild nature, her sharp tongue and reckless tendencies, should have made her an impossible partner. Yet, there was something oddly reassuring in the way Red handled herself in the midst of the chaos. It was as if she thrived in these moments, where disorder reigned and nothing was certain, but Chloe wasn't one to trust easily. Especially not someone like Red. Still, for now, they needed each other. The chaos that had erupted at the celebration wasn't something Chloe could control on her own. And Red, as much as she enjoyed the chaos, seemed just as invested in solving the mystery. As they reached the edge of the courtyard, the palace loomed ahead, its sealed doors a reminder of the growing threat within. The storm raged above, swirling with unnatural power, and it was clear that they were running out of time. The chaos was only beginning, and Red and Chloe, opposites in almost every way, would have to find a way to work together, or risk Auradon falling to forces they didn't yet understand. The palace grounds were eerily silent as Red and Chloe hurried through the courtyard, the strange storm swirling ominously overhead. The wind had died down, leaving an unsettling calm in its wake. Chloe's thoughts raced, her heart pounding not just from the sprint but from the weight of the growing mystery. Whatever was happening wasn't natural. This was magic, wild and uncontrolled, and she needed answers, fast. Beside her, Red moved with a purpose Chloe hadn't expected. Despite her usual nonchalance, Red's sharp eyes were alert, scanning every shadow, every movement around them. Chloe couldn't help but be impressed. Red might thrive in chaos, but she also knew how to navigate it. And right now, that was exactly what they needed. Where does this Hatter kid live anyway? Red asked, breaking the tense silence as they approached a narrow, winding path leading out of the courtyard. Not far, Chloe replied, her gaze flicking toward the darkened woods beyond the palace grounds. He doesn't live within the palace walls. His family is different. Different? Wonderland kind of different? Red asked with a smirk, raising an eyebrow. Chloe nodded. Exactly. The Hatter family has always been a bit eccentric. His father was famous for his unpredictable magic and unusual inventions. His son, though, he's even more unpredictable, but he might be our only chance to figure out what's happening. The two continued through the shadowy path, their pace quickening as the strange storm above began to thicken. Chloe's mind wandered to the stories she had heard about the Mad Hatter's son. Even as a child, he had been known for his odd, almost otherworldly inventions, most of which seemed to follow no rules of magic Chloe understood. Still, if anyone had the knowledge they needed right now, it would be him. After what felt like an eternity, they finally reached a small, twisted cottage nestled within a grove of trees just outside the palace grounds. The house, with its crooked roof and leaning walls, looked like it had been pulled straight from Wonderland itself. Multicolored smoke drifted lazily from the chimney, and the faint sound of ticking clocks filled the air around them. This must be the place, Red said, her tone half amused, half impressed. Chloe nodded, her hand hovering uncertainly over the brass door knocker shaped like a teapot. Before she could touch it, however, the door creaked open on its own, revealing a figure standing in the dim light inside. That he was tall and lanky, his unruly mop of brown hair sticking out at odd angles beneath a battered top hat. His clothes were a patchwork of mismatched colors, layered in a way that made him look like he'd just stepped out of a dream, or a nightmare, depending on how you saw it. His bright green eyes twinkled with a mix of mischief and curiosity as he leaned against the doorframe, studying them both. Well, if it isn't the daughter of Cinderella herself, he said with a grin that was both charming and unsettling. And you've brought along the Queen of Hearts' little rebel. How quaint. Cut the theatrics, Hatter, Red shot back, her arms crossed. We need your help. The Hatter's son, whose real name was Elliot, chuckled softly, stepping aside to let them in. "Oh, I'm sure you do. Chaos in Auradon is hardly an everyday occurrence. But then again, nothing is ever as it seems, is it?" Chloe exchanged a wary glance with Red before stepping inside. The interior of the cottage was exactly as she'd expected, cluttered, chaotic, and filled with all manner of strange objects. Clocks lined the walls, each one ticking at a different rhythm. Shelves overflowed with teapots, books, and odd trinkets that seemed to defy explanation. In the center of the room sat a large wooden table, covered in half-finished inventions and what appeared to be magical blueprints. Elliot moved to the table, his movements quick and jerky, like a puppet with too many strings. He picked up a small object and twirled it between his fingers. "I know why you're here," he said, his voice suddenly more serious. "The storm. The magic. It's not natural." Chloe's eyes widened. "You know what's causing it?" Elliot nodded slowly, his eyes glinting with a strange intensity. "I don't know exactly who's behind it, but I do know that it's tied to time itself. Time is unraveling, bending, shifting, becoming unstable. And if it isn't stopped, it could tear everything apart." Red raised an eyebrow, clearly intrigued. "Time? You mean someone's messing with time magic?" Elliot's grin returned, though there was something darker in his expression now. "Not just anyone. The storm, the sealed palace doors, the chaos, it all points to an ancient piece of magic. A pocket watch, to be precise." He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small, intricately designed pocket watch. It was made of gleaming silver, with a swirling pattern engraved on its cover. The watch glowed faintly with an otherworldly light, and even without opening it, Chloe could feel the power radiating from it. "This," Elliot said softly, holding the watch up for them to see, "was created by my father, the Mad Hatter, many years ago. It's no ordinary timepiece. It can manipulate time itself, rewind it, fast-forward it, even create alternate timelines if used incorrectly. It's powerful, dangerous, and in the wrong hands, it could destroy everything." Chloe stepped forward, her eyes locked on the watch. "And you think whoever's causing this storm has another one of these?" Elliot nodded. "There were only 2 ever made. My father kept one for himself, and the other was lost, or stolen, depending on who you ask. I suspect someone has found the second watch and is using it to alter the timeline. The storm you've seen. It's just the beginning. If time continues to unravel, Auradon, and maybe the rest of the world, could be caught in an endless loop of chaos." Red leaned in, her eyes narrowing as she studied the pocket watch. "So, how do we stop it?" Elliot hesitated for a moment, his gaze flicking between the 2 girls. "Stopping it won't be easy. The watch is linked to the fabric of time itself. To fix what's happening, you'll need to travel back in time and find the moment that set this all in motion. If you can stop that moment, the timeline will correct itself, and the storm will disappear." Chloe felt a chill run down her spine. "You're saying we need to use this watch to go back in time?" Elliot nodded. "Exactly. But be warned, time is delicate. If you make a wrong move, you could make things worse. Much worse. Red grinned, a glint of excitement in her eyes. Sounds like fun. Chloe, on the other hand, felt the weight of the situation settling over her like a heavy cloak. Time travel. The stakes were higher than she'd imagined. If they failed, it wasn't just Auradon that would be at risk, it was the entire fabric of time itself. Elliot placed the watch in Chloe's hand, his expression serious. Remember, time doesn't like being messed with. Be careful. And whatever you do, don't get caught. Chloe looked at Red, who was already brimming with anticipation. This was it. They had no choice but to work together, to go back in time and stop whatever, or whoever, had started this chaos. Their journey had just begun, and the stakes had never been higher. The Mad Hatter's son watched as Red and Chloe stood across the room from each other, both gripping the weight of the task before them. The magical pocket watch felt heavier in Chloe's hands than she expected, its ticking now ominous rather than rhythmic. She glanced at Red, who seemed entirely unbothered by the gravity of their situation, leaning casually against a cluttered shelf. The air between them was thick with tension. Despite everything they'd just learned, the storm, the collapsing timeline, the need for immediate action, neither could ignore the fact that working together was the last thing either of them wanted. Red glanced at Chloe, her arms still folded across her chest. "So, what's the plan, princess?" she asked, her tone half mocking, half curious. "I assume you've got some grand idea of how we're supposed to fix time itself." Chloe tightened her grip on the watch, her irritation flaring. "We can't just rush into this," she snapped. "Time travel isn't something to take lightly. One wrong move, and we could do more harm than good." Red rolled her eyes, clearly unimpressed by Chloe's caution. "You're such a buzzkill. Do you ever just act? Not everything needs to be analyzed to death." Chloe's jaw clenched, and she struggled to maintain her composure. "This isn't a game, Red. Time is fragile. One mistake and everyone we know, could be lost." Red pushed herself off the shelf, her smirk fading. "I get that. But you think being careful is gonna save us? We don't have time to sit around and strategize for hours. This is happening now." Chloe turned away, her thoughts racing. Red's impulsiveness was exactly what she feared. She had spent her whole life in control, knowing exactly what to do in every situation. But this was different. Time travel wasn't something she could predict, and the unpredictability of it gnawed at her, feeding her doubt. She glanced back at Red, who had begun pacing the room, her fiery hair glowing in the dim light. As much as Chloe hated to admit it, there was a part of her that envied Red's ability to embrace the unknown, to thrive in chaos. But that same trait also terrified her. "I need a moment to think," Chloe finally said, her voice tight. Red stopped pacing and threw her hands up in frustration. "Of course you do. Fine, think all you want, but I'm not sitting around while that storm gets worse." As the room fell silent again, Chloe moved to the window and gazed out at the swirling storm clouds that still darkened the sky over Auradon. Her mind whirled with questions. How had this all started? What event in the past could have triggered the collapse of time itself? And, more importantly, how could they prevent it without causing even more damage? The watch ticked softly in her hand, its magic buzzing faintly against her skin. She felt the weight of responsibility pressing down on her. She had always been the one who brought order to chaos, but this was unlike anything she had faced before. Time travel wasn't about order, it was about surviving the unpredictable. Meanwhile, Red had settled back into her usual casual stance, though Chloe could see the flicker of frustration in her eyes. For all her bravado, Red wasn't completely indifferent to what was happening. She just had a different way of handling it, recklessness disguised as confidence. For the first time, Chloe wondered if there was more to Red's behavior than sheer rebellion. Maybe Red's need for chaos came from something deeper, something Chloe hadn't bothered to consider before. "I don't trust you," Chloe said abruptly, turning to face Red. Red arched an eyebrow. "The feeling's mutual, Princess." Chloe ignored the jab. "But if we're going to do this, we have to work together. That means no impulsive decisions, no rushing in without thinking. We can't afford to make mistakes." Red studied her for a moment, then shrugged. "Fine. But if we're working together, it means you're not gonna overthink every move. Sometimes you just have to act." Chloe sighed, knowing they'd reached as close to an agreement as they could. It was clear they were never going to see eye to eye, but for now, they didn't have to. They just needed to get through this without tearing each other apart, and without breaking time itself. Elliot, who had been quietly observing the tension between them, cleared his throat. "You'll need to decide when and where to go. The watch can take you anywhere in time, but you'll have to be precise. Find the moment that triggered the chaos." Chloe's brow furrowed in thought. "We need to figure out what event could have disrupted the timeline. Something major, something that shifted the balance of magic in Auradon." Red snorted. "This place has had plenty of disasters. It's like a drama magnet. How do we know which one to fix?" Chloe ignored the sarcasm and began pacing, her mind racing through possibilities. "It has to be something connected to magic, something that affected the entire kingdom." Elliot stepped forward, holding out a worn book that looked as old as time itself. "My father kept detailed records of magical events in Auradon. I've looked through them, and there's one event that stands out, a royal gathering many years ago, long before either of you were born. The Mad Hatter was there, and so was every major magical figure in the kingdom." Chloe took the book from Elliot, flipping through its yellowed pages. "A royal gathering. That could be it. If something went wrong there, it could have affected the entire kingdom's magic." Red leaned over her shoulder, scanning the book with mild interest. "So we just crash the party, figure out what happened, and fix it? Easy enough." Chloe shot her a look. "It's not that simple. We have to make sure we don't change anything we're not supposed to. Even the smallest alteration could have serious consequences." Red rolled her eyes. Yeah, I get it. Don't touch anything, don't change history. But if we just sit around worrying about what we might do, we're gonna be too late." Chloe sighed, realizing that this was how it would be, a constant push and pull between her cautious nature and Red's recklessness. But Red was right about one thing: time was slipping away, and they couldn't afford to wait much longer. Chloe glanced at Elliot. "How do we use the watch?" Elliot smiled, his eyes gleaming with the same madness that seemed to run in his family. "It's simple. Just set the watch to the time and place you want to go. The magic will do the rest. But remember, time is unpredictable. Once you're there, you'll need to act quickly." Chloe nodded, glancing at Red one last time. "Are you ready for this?" Red grinned. "I've been ready for chaos since the day I was born." Despite herself, Chloe almost smiled. Almost, with a deep breath, Chloe turned the dial on the pocket watch, setting it to the date Elliot had shown her in the book. The watch's ticking grew louder, the magic within it sparking to life. As the air around them began to hum with energy, Chloe felt a surge of uncertainty wash over her. She was stepping into the unknown, something she had spent her entire life avoiding. But there was no turning back now. The room blurred, and the ticking of the watch grew louder and louder, until, with a sudden jolt, the world around them disappeared. Their journey back in time had begun. As Chloe turned the dial of the pocket watch, setting it to the precise date of the royal gathering, a strange energy began to pulse through the air around them. The ticking of the watch grew louder, rhythmic but unsettling, like a heartbeat echoing through time itself. Chloe glanced at Red, whose expression showed more excitement than concern. The sense of impending uncertainty hung heavily in the room. "Hold on tight," Elliot said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Time doesn't like being toyed with." Chloe took a deep breath, steeling herself for whatever was about to happen. She had no idea what it would feel like to be ripped from one time and thrown into another. Red, meanwhile, simply grinned, as if this was all just another thrill ride. Suddenly, the watch glowed brightly, casting shimmering lights all around them. The air seemed to vibrate, distorting reality, bending the walls of the room until they blurred and twisted. Chloe felt a powerful tug in her chest, like gravity itself was pulling her into the very fabric of the watch. Her vision began to swim, and the ground beneath her feet seemed to dissolve, sending her tumbling through an endless void of swirling light and shadow. For a brief moment, there was nothing but chaos. Everything around them seemed to fold in on itself, sounds, sights, even time. Chloe could feel herself spinning, weightless and disoriented. It was as though the entire universe had been reduced to a whirlwind of color and sensation, and she was lost in its current. Her breath caught in her throat as a wave of nausea hit her. She reached out instinctively, her fingers brushing against something solid, Red's arm. Red was still grinning, though even she looked slightly disoriented. The sensation of falling, of being untethered, seemed to stretch on for an eternity. Then, as abruptly as it had started, the chaos stopped. Chloe's feet slammed onto solid ground, and the world around her snapped into focus. She stumbled, her knees buckling from the force of the landing, but Red caught her just before she fell. "Whoa, steady there, princess," Red said, her voice light but with an undercurrent of excitement. Chloe straightened herself, blinking rapidly to clear the dizziness from her vision. The disorientation of time travel still clung to her like a heavy fog, but as the haze lifted, she began to take in her surroundings. they were no longer in Elliot's cluttered cottage. Instead, they stood in the middle of a grand courtyard, surrounded by towering stone walls and lush gardens that seemed far too vibrant for the muted, stormy skies of the present. Sunlight bathed everything in a warm golden glow, and the air smelled fresh and sweet, like flowers in full bloom. Chloe's heart skipped a beat as she realized where, and when, they were. It was Auradon, but it wasn't the Auradon they had just left behind. This was Auradon of the past, alive with color and life. The once familiar palace grounds looked younger, more pristine, untouched by the years that had since worn down their grandeur. The trees were taller, their leaves shimmering in the sunlight, and the flowers seemed to bloom more brightly, their petals almost glowing with vibrant hues. This is Auradon," Chloe whispered, her voice laced with awe. "It's so different." Red let out a low whistle, spinning in place to take in the scenery. "No kidding. It's like we just stepped into some fairy tale dreamland." Chloe nodded, her eyes wide as she continued to survey the landscape. It was hard to believe that this was the same Auradon, the one she had grown up in. Everything felt so much more alive here, as if the magic that had once shaped this kingdom had been in full bloom, untarnished by the passage of time. As they stood there, absorbing the reality of the past, Chloe couldn't help but feel a strange sensation prickling at the back of her mind. It was as though they had entered a world that wasn't meant for them, a world that existed before their time. She had read about time travel in magical texts, but no amount of study could have prepared her for the actual experience. It wasn't just that they had traveled to the past, it was that the past felt different. There was an energy here, a pulse of life and magic that was more potent than anything Chloe had ever experienced. Red nudged her, breaking her from her thoughts. "All right, Princess, where do we start? We've got to find this royal gathering, right?" Chloe nodded, her mind snapping back to their mission. They couldn't waste time being awestruck. The clock was ticking, and the longer they stayed in the past, the greater the risk of disrupting something important. "The royal gathering," she murmured, recalling the details Elliot had given them. "It should be happening today. We need to get to the palace, but we can't be seen." Red's grin widened. "A stealth mission? Now we're talking." Chloe frowned. "I'm serious, Red. If anyone sees us, it could change everything. We can't risk altering the past." Yeah, I get it," Red replied, waving her hand dismissively. "But sneaking into a party? That's more my speed than yours. Just follow my lead." Chloe's stomach twisted. Red's version of stealth was probably a lot more reckless than what she had in mind, but there wasn't time to argue. They had to move quickly. The two of them made their way through the lush gardens surrounding the palace, sticking to the shadows as much as possible. The sounds of laughter and music floated on the breeze, and Chloe realized with a start that the celebration was already in full swing. As they drew closer to the grand palace doors, Chloe's heart pounded in her chest. She could hear the clinking of glasses and the murmur of voices inside, and her mind raced with thoughts of what could go wrong. One wrong move, one word spoken to the wrong person, and the entire timeline could unravel. The weight of that responsibility bore down on her with every step. Red, however, seemed completely unbothered. She moved with the ease of someone who thrived in uncertainty, her steps light and confident. Chloe envied her ability to remain so calm in the face of potential disaster. "There," Red whispered, pointing toward a side entrance that was half hidden behind a trellis of ivy. "Looks like our way in." Chloe nodded, her pulse quickening. This was it, their first real test in the past. If they could slip into the palace unnoticed, they would have a chance to observe the gathering and figure out what event had triggered the chaos in the future. They approached the entrance cautiously, slipping through the doorway into a narrow corridor that led deeper into the palace. The inside of the palace was even more opulent than Chloe remembered. The marble floors gleamed, the tapestries on the walls looked new, and the chandeliers hanging above them sparkled like 1,000 stars. This was Auradon at its peak, untouched by time. Chloe swallowed hard. "We need to be careful," she whispered. "If we change anything—" I know, Red cut in, her voice low but full of impatience. "Don't mess with history." "I've got it, Princess. Now let's move." As they crept further into the palace, the sounds of the gathering grew louder. Chloe's heart raced as they reached a set of ornate double doors leading into the grand ballroom. The past was unfolding on the other side of those doors, and they were about to step right into it. The grand ballroom stretched out before Red and Chloe, a dazzling display of Auradon's former glory. As they stepped through the doors, the sight hit them like a wave, momentarily freezing them in place. The Auradon of the past was more than just different, it was vibrant, grand, and full of life in a way that seemed almost magical. Golden light poured in through towering arched windows, bathing the ballroom in a warm, glowing radiance. Guests, dressed in lavish attire from different kingdoms, mingled and danced beneath glittering chandeliers. The air was filled with the soft hum of laughter, the delicate clinking of glasses, and the rich notes of an orchestra playing in the background. Chloe couldn't help but stare, her breath catching in her throat. This wasn't just a different Auradon, it was a perfect version of the kingdom. Everything seemed flawless, from the immaculately dressed nobles to the ornate decorations that lined the walls. Even the magic in the air felt stronger, more tangible, as though the kingdom itself was alive with power. "This is incredible," Chloe whispered, her voice filled with awe. She had read about the grandeur of Auradon's past, but seeing it with her own eyes was something else entirely. Red, however, looked less impressed and more intrigued. Her sharp gaze swept the room, taking in the details, the movements of the guests, the grand displays of wealth and power. "It's a bit much, don't you think?" she muttered, crossing her arms. "I mean, who needs this much gold and sparkle?" Chloe shot her a look. This is the height of Auradon's golden age. This was when the kingdom was at its strongest, its most unified. "Yeah, well, it feels more like a giant show-off party to me," Red replied, though her eyes were fixed on the spectacle. "But I'll give them credit for knowing how to throw a celebration." They moved cautiously along the edges of the room, trying to blend in without drawing attention. Both were acutely aware of the fact that they were out of place. Their clothes, while elegant, didn't quite match the historical attire worn by the guests. But the magic of the pocket watch had seemingly worked to make them less conspicuous, for no one gave them more than a passing glance. As they walked, Chloe's heart raced. This was more than just a historical setting, this was the living, breathing past. Everyone in the room was someone she had read about in her studies of Auradon's history. They weren't just figures in a textbook anymore, they were real, and they were right in front of her. There, Red whispered, nodding toward a cluster of people at the far end of the ballroom. That's gotta be the royal crowd. Chloe followed Red's gaze and spotted them, a group of distinguished figures standing at the head of the room, engaged in conversation. At the center was a young King Adam, looking regal and confident, with Queen Belle by his side. Chloe's heart skipped a beat. They were the very foundation of Auradon, the rulers who had brought peace to the kingdom and united the different realms, but it wasn't just the king and queen who caught her attention. Standing among them were several other key figures of Auradon's history, people whose names had echoed through time. Fairy Godmother, looking radiant in her blue gown, was chatting with Merlin, who appeared younger and far less eccentric than the wizard Chloe had known from the present. Next to them stood Maleficent and the evil queen, both appearing strangely cordial, as though this was before their eventual descent into villainy. It's like a who's who of Auradon history, Red muttered, her eyes scanning the group. All the big names, right here. Chloe nodded, her mind racing. This was the royal gathering that Elliot had mentioned, the one where something had gone horribly wrong, leading to the chaos they were now trying to prevent. But what could it be? Everything seemed so perfect, so idyllic. How could such a grand occasion lead to disaster? We need to get closer, Chloe whispered. We have to listen, see if we can figure out what's going on. Red smirked. Follow my lead, princess. Before Chloe could protest, Red wove through the crowd with surprising grace, slipping effortlessly between groups of guests as though she belonged there. Chloe hurried to keep up, her heart pounding in her chest. Red's confidence was startling, but it seemed to be working. No one questioned their presence as they approached the royal group. As they neared the cluster of historical figures, the conversation became clearer. King Adam was speaking in a low, commanding voice, his expression serious despite the jovial atmosphere around them. And I believe it's time we take more drastic measures, he was saying, his brow furrowed. The balance of power in Auradon is fragile, and we cannot afford to let it slip. Fairy Godmother nodded solemnly. The magic here is strong, but it is not infinite. We must ensure that it is used wisely, or we risk upsetting the balance entirely. Chloe frowned, her mind racing. What were they talking about? The balance of magic. Was this the event that led to the chaos they had come to stop? She glanced at Red, who looked equally intrigued. Something's off, Red whispered. They're worried about the magic, but it doesn't look like anything's wrong yet. Chloe's eyes darted across the group. Queen Belle was listening intently, her hand resting lightly on King Adam's arm, while Merlin and Fairy Godmother exchanged worried glances. Even Maleficent, normally so composed, seemed unusually tense. We need to hear more, Chloe whispered. They edged closer, careful to stay within earshot without drawing attention. As they did, another figure stepped forward, a man with striking green eyes and a mischievous grin, dressed in flamboyant, colorful clothing. Chloe recognized him instantly from the descriptions in Eliot's book, The Mad Hatter's Son. She whispered to Red. Red's eyes narrowed. "The guy who made that watch?" Chloe nodded. "He's the one who created the pocket watch. His magic was unpredictable, to say the least." The Mad Hatter's son, who introduced himself as Harlan, was speaking now, his voice light but laced with an undercurrent of something darker. "I've always believed that magic should be free, untamed," Harlan said with a grin. "Why restrict its use when it can do so much more? Imagine the possibilities if we allowed the boundaries of magic to expand." King Adam's frown deepened. "That's a dangerous line of thinking, Harlan. The last time someone tried to harness magic without limits, it nearly destroyed the kingdom." Harlan shrugged. "Perhaps, but times are changing. Auradon is growing, and its magic should grow with it. We can't cling to the old ways forever." Chloe's breath caught in her throat. This was it. Harlan's ideas, his desire to push the limits of magic, were what had led to the instability in the future. If they didn't stop him, if his ideas were allowed to take root here, it could unravel everything. Red, sensing the same danger, whispered urgently to Chloe. "He's the one, isn't he? We have to stop him before he convinces them." Chloe nodded, her mind racing. But how? They couldn't just confront him here, in front of everyone. They had to be careful. One wrong move, and they could disrupt the entire timeline. Before she could respond, Harlan raised a goblet in a mock toast, his grin widening. "To the future," he said, his voice ringing out across the room. "To a world where magic is boundless." The room fell silent for a moment as his words echoed through the grand ballroom. Chloe's pulse quickened. This was the tipping point. If they didn't act soon, the consequences would be catastrophic. As the music resumed and the guests began to mingle once more, Chloe and Red exchanged a tense glance. The pieces were starting to fall into place, but the stakes had never been higher. Now, they had to figure out how to stop Harlan, before his vision of unbridled magic set the stage for the chaos that would tear Auradon apart. They had come to the past to prevent disaster, but the danger was far greater than either of them had anticipated. The future of Auradon depended on what they did next. Red and Chloe lingered at the edges of the grand ballroom, their hearts still racing from the encounter with Harlan and the troubling conversation they had overheard. But as they continued to observe the royal gathering, something else caught their attention, a subtle yet undeniable shift in the atmosphere. The once celebratory mood in the room had grown tense. It wasn't immediately obvious, but both Chloe and Red could feel it, like a faint undercurrent of unease rippling through the crowd. There were whispers, furtive glances exchanged between a few individuals, and a strange sense of anticipation hanging in the air. "Something's not right," Chloe muttered, her gaze scanning the room. Red nodded, her sharp eyes narrowing as she caught sight of a few figures lingering in the shadows. They weren't nobles, that much was clear. Dressed in muted colors and moving with an unnatural grace, they seemed to be avoiding the main gathering, blending into the background too easily. "Those people," Red said under her breath, "they don't belong here." Chloe followed her gaze and immediately noticed what Red had seen. The mysterious figures were subtly weaving through the crowd, watching everything with calculated intensity. They weren't just here to observe the celebration, they had a purpose. Do you think they're part of the reason for the chaos in the future? Chloe asked, her voice tight with suspicion. Red's lips curled into a sly smile. Only one way to find out. Before Chloe could stop her, Red slipped away from their spot near the wall and moved toward the mysterious figures. Chloe's heart skipped a beat, torn between stopping her impulsive partner and letting her take the lead. But after a second's hesitation, she followed, knowing that they couldn't let these people go unchecked. As they moved closer, Chloe and Red were able to make out the details of the group. There were 4 of them, all dressed in plain, nondescript clothes that made them almost invisible in the opulence of the ballroom. Their faces were partially obscured by the hoods of their cloaks, but their eyes gleamed with a dangerous intensity. One of the figures, a tall man with piercing green eyes, whispered something to his companions. His voice was low, but it carried an edge of menace that sent a chill down Chloe's spine. "They're planning something," she whispered to Red. "We need to find out what." Red nodded, her eyes locked on the man. "We'll have to split up. You get closer to the guy in charge. I'll keep an eye on the others." Chloe hesitated for a moment, but Red's confidence was infectious. She took a deep breath and nodded. "All right. Be careful." Red flashed a cocky grin. "Careful's my middle name." With that, they split up, Red moving to shadow the smaller group while Chloe cautiously made her way toward the man who appeared to be leading them. He was standing near the edge of the ballroom, his eyes scanning the crowd as though he was waiting for the perfect moment to strike. As Chloe approached, she pretended to be adjusting her gown, blending into the crowd as best as she could. She was close enough now to hear snatches of conversation, though the man's voice remained soft and guarded. "The watch will be activated soon," he murmured to the figure beside him. "Once it happens, we move. Everything depends on it." Chloe's heart raced. The watch. Were they talking about Harlan's pocket watch, or was this another artifact entirely? Whatever it was clearly the key to their plan. Before she could move any closer, one of the figures glanced her way, his sharp gaze flicking over her for just a moment. Chloe froze, her pulse quickening, but the man turned back to his conversation without suspicion. She breathed a silent sigh of relief. She was still unnoticed, for now. Meanwhile, Red had positioned herself near the 3 other figures, listening intently as they spoke in hushed tones. "Do you think the king suspects anything?" one of them asked, a hint of nervousness in his voice. The leader chuckled darkly. "The king is too blinded by his vision of peace to see what's right in front of him. That's why we're here. Auradon's future needs more than just benevolent rulers. It needs control." Red's eyes narrowed. These weren't just random troublemakers, they had a plan, and it involved changing the very fabric of Auradon's future. Her gut instincts flared. She didn't like this at all. As the 2 groups continued their whispered conversations, Chloe and Red locked eyes from across the room. They had gathered enough to know these people were dangerous, and their goal was nothing less than altering Auradon's future. But they needed more information, specifically, how and when the group planned to act. Suddenly, the man with green eyes lifted his hand, signaling to the others. His voice, still low but commanding, was clear now. It's time. Chloe's stomach twisted. She looked toward Red, who gave a small nod in return. This was it, whatever they had planned, it was happening now. Before they could react, the leader of the group stepped forward, his eyes locked on the royal family at the head of the room. With a swift motion, he reached into his cloak and pulled out a small, intricately designed device. Chloe's breath caught in her throat as she realized what it was, another magical timepiece, much like the one Elliot had given them, but twisted, darker in its design. He's going to use it, Chloe whispered urgently. Red was already moving, her hand reaching for the small dagger hidden in her sleeve. But just as she lunged toward the group, a wave of powerful magic exploded from the timepiece, sending a shockwave through the room. Guests screamed as the air itself seemed to ripple with energy, warping and distorting reality. The mysterious figures disappeared in the chaos, their plan already in motion. Red and Chloe scrambled to their feet, their eyes meeting in a moment of shared determination. This was their first real challenge in the past, and it had just begun. Chloe helped Red up, the adrenaline pumping through her veins. We have to stop them. Red nodded, dusting herself off. I'm with you. For the first time since they had met, Chloe felt a glimmer of mutual respect pass between them. Red's recklessness had saved them from being caught off guard, and Chloe's quick thinking had kept them one step ahead of the mysterious figures. Maybe they weren't so different after all. Without another word, they raced out of the ballroom together, determined to stop the unseen threats before it was too late. As the dust from the magical explosion settled, Red and Chloe found themselves racing down a dimly lit corridor, away from the chaotic ballroom. The eerie quiet of the hallway contrasted sharply with the turmoil they had just escaped. Their footsteps echoed as they ran, their hearts pounding in sync with the urgency of their mission. We need to find them before they can use that timepiece again, Chloe said breathlessly, her mind racing. She could still feel the ripples of dark magic in the air, and it sent a shiver down her spine. Agreed, Red replied, her tone uncharacteristically serious. But we can't just charge in without a plan. Chloe glanced at her, surprised by the cautious note in Red's voice. For someone as brash and reckless as Red, this moment of strategic thinking was unexpected. Red caught Chloe's look and smirked. Don't act so shocked, princess. I don't always run headfirst into danger. Sometimes, I think first. Chloe let out a small laugh despite the tension, shaking her head. I didn't think you were capable of being careful. There's a lot you don't know about me, Red said with a wink, but there was a hint of something deeper in her words. As they moved further down the corridor, the adrenaline from the ballroom's chaos began to fade, replaced by a heavier silence between them. The tension of the night's events had taken a toll on both of them, but something else was shifting. The awkward, forced partnership between them was beginning to soften into something more. After a while, they slowed their pace, realizing they had a moment to catch their breath before the next phase of their mission. We make a pretty good team, Chloe said quietly, glancing at Red. Red raised an eyebrow, smirking. Is that your way of saying you're finally warming up to me? Chloe chuckled. I guess it is. You're not exactly what I expected. Red leaned casually against the stone wall, crossing her arms. And what did you expect? Aloud, reckless troublemaker who doesn't think before she acts. Chloe opened her mouth to protest, then stopped, realizing that had been exactly her first impression of Red. She smiled sheepishly. Maybe. Red laughed, a deep, genuine sound that caught Chloe off guard. I can't blame you. I know how I come off. She paused, her eyes drifting down the corridor as though lost in thought. But people don't always see what's underneath, you know. Chloe nodded, sensing that Red was opening up in a way she hadn't before. This was a side of her Chloe hadn't seen, more thoughtful, more vulnerable. Red's bold exterior was a mask, and for the first time, Chloe felt like she was seeing the real person behind it. They continued walking, but at a slower pace now, their guard still up, but their conversation lighter. Chloe hesitated for a moment before asking, "What's your story, Red? Why did you come to Auradon in the first place?" Red sighed, as if weighing whether or not to answer. Then, with a shrug, she spoke. I grew up in the Shadowlands, on the edge of Auradon. My family, well, we weren't exactly royalty. She smirked, but there was no humor in her eyes. We lived in the wilds, outside the protection of the kingdom. It was a hard life, full of danger and struggle. I had to learn to fend for myself pretty early on. Chloe listened intently, surprised at the raw honesty in Red's words. She had never considered what life might be like outside the safety of Auradon, where peace and unity were taken for granted. I never really fit in with the world of nobles and ballrooms, Red continued. That's why I was so skeptical when I got this invitation to join Auradon's grand celebration. I knew I'd never be one of them. She shrugged again, trying to play it off, but Chloe could see the tension in her expression. But it wasn't just about me. I wanted something better for my family. So, I took a chance. Chloe felt a pang of empathy. That sounds difficult. I didn't realize things were so different outside the kingdom. Red glanced at her. And what about you? I bet life in the royal court wasn't exactly easy either. Chloe sighed, running a hand through her hair. It had its challenges. I grew up in the shadow of my family's legacy. My mother and father are respected figures, and everyone expected me to follow in their footsteps. I was supposed to be the perfect daughter, always polite, always doing the right thing. She paused, her voice softening. But it's hard, constantly trying to live up to expectations. It feels like there's no room for mistakes. Red snorted softly. You're allowed to mess up, princess. Nobody's perfect, not even you. Chloe smiled, appreciating the blunt but comforting sentiment. That's what I'm learning. But it's taken me a while to figure that out. They walked in silence for a few moments, both of them lost in their own thoughts. The tension that had defined their relationship at the beginning had dissipated, replaced by a sense of mutual understanding. I guess we're more alike than I thought, Chloe said quietly. Both of us trying to find our place in a world that doesn't quite fit. Red gave her a sideways glance, a genuine smile tugging at her lips. Yeah, I guess we are. Chloe looked at her, realizing how much her opinion of Red had changed in such a short time. At first, She had seen her as brash, impulsive, and unpredictable. But now, she saw someone who was brave, resourceful, and determined, someone who had fought hard to survive in a world that had never given her anything for free. "And you're not as annoying as I thought," Red added with a grin, breaking the silence. Chloe rolled her eyes, but she couldn't help smiling. "I'll take that as a compliment." Red chuckled. "You should." As they continued through the darkened corridors, Chloe felt a sense of trust forming between them. They were still different in so many ways, but those differences no longer felt like barriers. Instead, they felt like strengths, two sides of the same coin, working together toward a common goal. "Whatever happens next," Chloe said, her voice steady, "I'm glad we're in this together." Red's smirk softened into a sincere expression. "Yeah. Me too." For the first time since their journey began, they were more than reluctant allies, they were becoming friends, and as they moved closer to their goal, that bond would prove to be their greatest strength. The winding corridors of Auradon's palace had grown darker and more foreboding as Red and Chloe ventured deeper. Their earlier banter faded into silence, replaced by a growing sense of unease. They had followed the trail of the mysterious figures from the ballroom, but now, as they navigated the labyrinth of hidden passageways, both felt the weight of the unknown pressing in. "We're getting close," Red muttered under her breath, her sharp eyes scanning the shadows. Chloe nodded, her heart pounding in her chest. The air felt thick, charged with something ominous. She had heard rumors about secret factions operating in the depths of Auradon, but nothing had prepared her for the reality they were now facing. If the figures they had seen earlier were part of something larger, then their mission had just become much more dangerous. Suddenly, Red stopped in her tracks, her hand shooting out to block Chloe's path. "Do you hear that?" she whispered. Chloe strained her ears. At first, all she could hear was the distant drip of water and the muffled echoes of the palace above. But then, faint voices began to filter through the walls, coming from a hidden chamber nearby. The tone was serious, deliberate. It was clear this wasn't just idle conversation. "We found them," Chloe whispered, her pulse quickening. Red grinned. "Let's see what these troublemakers are up to." They crept closer to the source of the voices, pressing themselves against a heavy wooden door. It was slightly ajar, allowing them to peek inside without being seen. What they saw took Chloe's breath away. The room was dimly lit by flickering torches, casting long shadows on the stone walls. In the center of the chamber stood a large, round table, around which sat a group of figures cloaked in dark, elaborate robes. Their faces were obscured, but their voices carried a weight of authority. These were no mere dissidents. This was a council, one with the power and influence to orchestrate a coup. Chloe's heart sank as she realized the full extent of what they were dealing with. "This must be the Hidden Council," she whispered to Red. "The ones plotting to overthrow the leaders of Auradon." Red's expression darkened. "I knew something was off. These aren't just random conspirators, they've been planning this for a long time." As they listened, one of the council members stood, his voice cold and calculating. "The time has come to remove the old guard from power," he declared. "Auradon's leaders have grown complacent, blind to the weaknesses in their kingdom. Our plan is already in motion." The chaos we've sown tonight is only the beginning. Chloe's stomach twisted in fear. These people weren't just a threat to Auradon's peace, they were planning to take everything down from the inside. We must move swiftly, the man continued. The royal family will be vulnerable after tonight's disruption. With the magical timepieces in our possession, we can manipulate events as we see fit. Auradon will be ours by the week's end. Red clenched her fists. We need to stop them, and fast. But just as they were about to retreat from their hiding spot, something shifted in the room. A sharp click echoed through the chamber, followed by a low, menacing voice. I wouldn't leave just yet, if I were you. Red and Chloe froze, their hearts leaping into their throats. Slowly, they turned to see a figure standing behind them, one of the council's guards, a tall man with a cruel smile and a sword at his side. Before they could react, more figures emerged from the shadows, surrounding them. The door slammed shut behind them, and Red cursed under her breath. It's a trap, Chloe whispered, her mind racing. Red narrowed her eyes, her body tensing as she prepared for a fight. I noticed. The guard smirked, his gaze shifting between them with amusement. We've been expecting you. Did you really think we wouldn't notice a couple of interlopers sneaking around? The council has eyes everywhere. Chloe's pulse quickened as the council members inside the room began to rise from their seats, turning their attention to the intruders. The leader of the group, a man with piercing dark eyes, stepped forward, his expression cold and calculating. So, the would-be saviors of Auradon have arrived, he said mockingly. I must admit, I didn't expect to be dealing with a princess and a vagabond. Red's eyes flashed with anger. Call me that again, and I'll show you how this vagabond handles traitors. The leader chuckled darkly. Such spirit. It's almost a shame you won't live long enough to see the fruits of your rebellion. He glanced at his guards. Take them. Chloe's heart pounded as the guards began to close in, their weapons gleaming in the dim light. She looked at Red, her mind racing for a way out. They were outnumbered and trapped, but they couldn't afford to be captured. Not now, when so much was at stake. Red gave her a sideways glance, a mischievous glint in her eyes. Follow my lead. Before Chloe could ask what she meant, Red sprang into action. With a swift, fluid movement, she threw herself at the nearest guard, her small dagger flashing in her hand. The guard stumbled back, caught off guard by the sudden attack, and Red used the moment of confusion to dart toward the door. Come on. Red yelled, her voice echoing in the stone chamber. Chloe didn't hesitate. She followed Red's lead, dodging the lunges of the guards and grabbing the edge of the heavy wooden door. Together, they slammed it shut behind them, locking their pursuers inside. For the moment, panting and out of breath, they bolted down the corridor, the sounds of shouting and footsteps echoing behind them. Nice move back there, Chloe gasped as they sprinted through the winding passageways. Red grinned, though her eyes were still sharp with focus. I told you, I don't always run in without thinking. Now let's get out of here before they catch up. They turned another corner, their footsteps echoing loudly in the silence. The exit was just ahead, an old, hidden door that led back to the main palace. But just as they reached it, Chloe glanced over her shoulder and saw the guards gaining on them. we're not going to make it," Chloe panted. Red's eyes narrowed as she quickly assessed their options. With a determined look, she grabbed Chloe's arm. "We'll make it." They slammed through the door and into the open air, running toward the palace courtyard. The guards' footsteps faded into the distance as they finally found cover behind a towering stone fountain. Catching her breath, Chloe glanced at Red. "We need a plan. They know we're onto them now." Red nodded, her expression serious. "Yeah, but we also know more than we did before. That council. They're the real threat to Auradon. We have to stop them, no matter what." Chloe met Red's gaze, determination flickering in her eyes. Their mission had just become even more perilous, but now they had a clearer target. They had narrowly escaped the council's trap, and though the danger was far from over, their bond had strengthened in the face of this new challenge. Together, they would take down the hidden council, before it was too late. Breathless and shaken, Red and Chloe leaned against the cool stone of the fountain, their minds racing to process the encounter with the hidden council. The moonlight illuminated the courtyard, casting a silver sheen over the ornate tiles as they caught their breath. "What was that back there?" Chloe asked, her voice trembling slightly. "Did they really intend to overthrow the royal family?" Red nodded, her expression grim. "They're serious about it. They think they can reshape Auradon's future by manipulating the past. We've got to figure out how they plan to do it and stop them before it's too late." Chloe bit her lip, her mind whirling with the implications. But what event are they trying to change? The council mentioned a plan already in motion. If they succeed, the consequences could be catastrophic. Red straightened up, her eyes narrowing with determination. "We need to think." They were talking about using the magical timepieces, right? What if they're planning to go back to a specific moment in history, one that would give them the power to alter everything? Chloe's heart raced as she recalled the brief snippets of conversation they had overheard. They mentioned the royal family being vulnerable after tonight's disruption. What if they plan to change the outcome of a pivotal event in Auradon's history? One where the current leaders rose to power. Red nodded slowly, the pieces beginning to click into place. "Yes, exactly. If they can go back to the moment the original treaty was signed between the kingdoms, they could manipulate the terms and set themselves up as rulers." Chloe's eyes widened with realization. The treaty. If they changed that, it could cause a ripple effect throughout history. Auradon's alliances would shatter, and they could claim power for themselves. They could rewrite the entire kingdom's history. Panic washed over Chloe as she grasped the urgency of their situation. But how do we find out when and where they're planning to go back? Red took a deep breath, her mind racing. "We need to get back to that hidden council chamber and look for any documents or clues. There might be a schedule or a list of their targets. If we can find that, we can figure out their plan." "Right," Chloe said, her determination returning. "But we have to be careful. They'll be on high alert now that they know we're after them." Red smirked, the fire returning to her eyes. "When have I ever played it safe?" Chloe couldn't help but smile at Red's bravado. Let's just try to avoid getting captured again." With that, they took a moment to collect themselves before slipping back into the shadows of the courtyard, retracing their steps toward the hidden passageway that led to the council's lair. They moved quickly, keeping their eyes peeled for any sign of danger. As they approached the heavy wooden door, they noticed it was slightly ajar, the flickering light of the torches spilling into the corridor. Red pushed the door open cautiously, scanning the room for any signs of the council members. It was eerily quiet. "Let's make this quick," Red whispered, slipping inside. Chloe followed, her heart pounding as they began to search the room. They rifled through the papers strewn across the table, each parchment filled with indecipherable scribbles and arcane symbols. Red quickly discarded the irrelevant documents, her frustration mounting. "Nothing here is giving us any clues," she muttered, tossing aside another parchment. Chloe continued to search the room, her eyes darting from one corner to another. Then something caught her attention, a leather-bound book tucked away at the back of the table. She carefully pulled it out, its spine cracked with age. "Red, look at this!" Chloe exclaimed, flipping open the book. The pages were filled with intricate diagrams and notes, each one detailing various historical events and their significance to Auradon's timeline. "Anything useful?" Red asked, glancing over her shoulder. Chloe scanned the pages, her brow furrowing as she flipped through the book. "Here. They've marked several key moments in history, including the signing of the treaty. It looks like they're planning to target it during the next full moon." Red's eyes widened in realization. "That's in just a few days. We have to get this information back to the present and warn the leaders of Auradon. Not to mention we need to stop them from activating their timepiece," Chloe added, the urgency palpable in her voice. Just then, they heard the sound of footsteps approaching. Red's heart raced as she quickly closed the book and shoved it into her satchel. "We have to get out of here. Now." They darted toward the door, but as they reached the exit, it swung open, revealing the guard they had encountered earlier, and this time, he was not alone. A group of council members filled the doorway, their expressions cold and menacing. "Going somewhere," the guard sneered. Panic surged through Chloe as she and Red exchanged frantic glances. The narrow corridor behind them was their only escape route, and they were running out of time. "Let's go!" Red shouted, grabbing Chloe's arm and pulling her back into the room. They dashed toward the far end, desperately searching for another way out. In the chaos, Chloe spotted a small window high on the wall. "There! We can escape through there." "Are you crazy? It's too high," Red replied, but there was no time to argue. Chloe grabbed a nearby chair and quickly positioned it beneath the window. "You go first. I'll follow." Red didn't hesitate. With a determined leap, she climbed onto the chair and boosted herself up, grabbing the edge of the window. She pulled herself through just as the guard shouted behind them, "Stop them!" Chloe clambered onto the chair and scrambled up after Red. As she reached the window, she could hear the guards pounding through the door behind her. She squeezed through just in time, landing hard on the ground outside. They took off running, their feet pounding against the cobblestones of the palace grounds. The cool night air rushed past them, the adrenaline fueling their escape. "Which way?" Chloe gasped, glancing back toward the palace. "Over there." Red pointed toward a dense thicket of trees just beyond the courtyard. We'll hide in there until we figure out our next move. They darted into the woods, their breath coming in ragged gasps. Once they were concealed by the thick foliage, they paused to catch their breath. Okay, we made it, Red said, looking at Chloe with a mixture of exhilaration and fear. But this isn't over. We still have to stop the council. Chloe nodded, the weight of their discovery sinking in. We have to warn everyone about their plan and find a way to stop them from reaching the treaty. Time is running out, Red reminded her. The full moon is just days away. We need to work fast. As they huddled together in the shadows of the trees, the reality of their situation became clear. They had uncovered the council's plot, but the stakes were higher than they had ever imagined. With the pivotal moment fast approaching, Red and Chloe knew they had to act, not just to save Auradon's future, but to protect their growing friendship forged in the heat of battle. Together, they would find a way to thwart the council's plans and restore peace to their world. The key moment was upon them, and failure was not an option. The cool night air was thick with tension as Red and Chloe made their way through the dense thicket, their minds racing with thoughts of what lay ahead. Every rustle of leaves and snap of twigs set their hearts pounding, a reminder that the hidden council was still on their trail. The full moon was only days away, and the weight of their mission pressed heavily on their shoulders. Okay, we need a plan, Chloe said, trying to steady her breathing. We can't just rush in without knowing what we're up against. Red shot her an incredulous look. We don't have time for a plan. The council is already working on their scheme. We need to get there and stop them before it's too late. Chloe felt frustration bubble within her. You're not listening. Charging in without thinking is exactly what got us into trouble in the first place. Maybe so, Red replied, crossing her arms defiantly. But if we don't act quickly, all of Auradon could fall into chaos. The tension between them was palpable, a tightrope of conflicting strategies. Chloe could appreciate Red's passion, but her impulsiveness could be their undoing. We need to find a balance between your recklessness and my caution, Chloe suggested, trying to keep her voice steady. Red raised an eyebrow. Fine. But let's make it quick. We need to scout the council's location first and then come up with a plan. We can't let them get to the treaty. Chloe nodded, realizing that the clock was ticking down to their next move. Right. Let's move before they regroup. They navigated through the thicket, the forest alive with sounds of night creatures. Each step forward felt like a race against an unseen enemy. As they reached the outskirts of the forest, the sprawling palace grounds came into view, illuminated by the soft glow of lanterns. Do you see that? Red pointed toward a darkened corner of the palace where shadowy figures moved stealthily. That's where the council is meeting. We need to get closer and listen in. Chloe hesitated, scanning the area for possible dangers. But there's a whole lot of guards patrolling the grounds. If we get caught, it's game over. Red's eyes gleamed with mischief. Then we'll create a diversion. You distract them while I slip inside and gather intel. Chloe shook her head, incredulous. That's exactly what I meant by reckless. I won't let you go in alone, especially not after what just happened. Before Red could respond, a flickering light caught their attention. An unexpected shimmer pulsed through the air, and a bright figure stepped into the clearing. It was a young woman, her hair a cascade of colorful locks, and she wore a shimmering gown that seemed to dance with the light. "Stop," she commanded, her voice melodic yet authoritative. "You cannot go any further." "Who are you?" Chloe demanded, instinctively stepping in front of Red. "Are you one of the council members?" The young woman laughed softly, shaking her head. "I am not with the council. My name is Lyra, and I am a guardian of Auradon's magic. I felt a disturbance in the energy of this realm." Red frowned. "We don't have time for this. We're trying to stop a coup." Lyra's eyes softened as she regarded them both. "Then you must understand the stakes. The council has summoned dark forces to aid their cause. You will face magical barriers and enchanted creatures should you proceed without preparation." Chloe exchanged a worried glance with Red. "What kind of dark forces?" "Creatures that thrive in chaos, summoned from ancient times," Lyra explained. "They won't hesitate to attack if they sense you are a threat." Red's expression shifted from frustration to determination. "So, what's the plan?" "We can't just back down because they have magic on their side." "Back down? I wouldn't dream of it," Lyra said with a confident smile. "But you will need protection. I can help you harness some of the magic of this realm to shield yourselves from harm." "Magic?" Chloe's curiosity piqued. "How does that work?" Lyra raised her hand, and a swirl of glowing energy coalesced around her fingers. "I can lend you both a fragment of my strength. With it, you'll be able to mask your presence from those who would seek to stop you." Red's eyes lit up with excitement. "That sounds perfect. We'll take it." Chloe hesitated, glancing at Red. "But what if it backfires? We don't know how to control magic like that." Lyra's smile remained gentle. "Trust in yourselves. The magic you wield will resonate with your intentions. Focus on your goals, and you will be guided." Red's resolve hardened. "Then we'll do it. We can't let Auradon fall into chaos." Lyra raised her hand higher, the energy swirling around them like a gentle breeze. "Hold on tight to each other and focus on the bond you share. Together, you can achieve more than you think." As they clasped hands, a warm glow enveloped them. The world around them seemed to vibrate with energy, and for a moment, they were filled with a sense of unity and purpose. "Now, go," Lyra urged. "Your time is running short." With renewed determination, Red and Chloe dashed toward the palace. As they approached the darkened corner, the guards remained oblivious to their presence, the magical barrier cloaking them like a protective veil. "See? It worked," Red whispered, a grin spreading across her face. Chloe couldn't help but smile back, but she quickly focused. "Let's stay sharp. We need to find the council's meeting place before they enact their plan." They crept closer, moving silently along the edge of the palace wall. As they neared a heavy wooden door marked with ancient symbols, Red motioned for Chloe to stop. "This must be it." Chloe nodded, her heart racing. But how do we get in? Before Red could respond, the door swung open, revealing a dimly lit chamber filled with council members. Chloe's breath caught in her throat as she recognized the leader from their earlier encounter. His eyes narrowed in concentration as he discussed plans with the others. "This is our chance," Red murmured, her eyes sparkling with determination. "Let's sneak inside and listen to what they're saying." Chloe hesitated, glancing back toward the darkness where they had come from. "We can't just barge in there. We need to be strategic about this." But Red was already slipping into the shadows, her determination overshadowing caution. Chloe followed, her heart pounding in her chest as they crept into the chamber, careful to avoid the flickering candlelight. As they edged closer, the council members' voices grew clearer. "The timepiece is ready for activation," the leader declared. "Once we reach the signing of the treaty, we'll change its terms and take control of Auradon for ourselves." Chloe's stomach dropped. They were running out of time. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from outside, causing the council members to turn in alarm. Red's eyes widened in panic. What was that? Before they could react, the door burst open, and a swarm of dark, shadowy creatures poured into the chamber, their eyes glowing with malice. "Defend yourselves," the leader shouted, drawing his weapon. Red and Chloe exchanged frantic glances. The magical shield Lyra had given them flared to life around them, but it would only hold for so long against this onslaught. "We need to get to the timepiece," Red yelled, her voice barely audible over the chaos. Chloe nodded, her mind racing with possibilities. They had to act fast. If they could reach the timepiece and destroy it, they might be able to disrupt the council's plans for good, but as the creatures swarmed around them, Chloe felt the grip of fear tightening. "We can't just charge in. We need to outsmart them." Red's eyes burned with resolve. "I'll create a distraction. You go for the timepiece." "Are you crazy?" Chloe shouted, panic rising in her chest. "We're not splitting up. Trust me." Red replied, her voice fierce. "I can hold them off. Just get to that timepiece." Chloe hesitated, torn between her instinct to protect Red and the urgency of their mission. The chaos around them was escalating, and every second counted. "Fine," she shouted, determination flaring within her. "But you better be careful." With that, Red dashed toward the nearest group of creatures, her dagger glinting in the dim light. Chloe turned and sprinted toward the pedestal where the timepiece glimmered ominously, its intricate gears whirring in anticipation of activation. As she reached the timepiece, she felt a surge of energy flow through her, the magical shield responding to her intent. She placed her hands on the cool surface, focusing on disrupting the connection that tied it to the council's plans. Behind her, the sounds of battle filled the air. Red's voice rang out, defiant and strong. "You'll never take Auradon." Chloe's heart raced as she worked to dismantle the magic surrounding the timepiece. But just as she began to manipulate its gears, a dark shadow loomed over her. "Stop her," the council leader shouted, lunging toward Chloe, his weapon raised. Time seemed to slow as Chloe turned to face him, her heart pounding in her ears. With one final push, she concentrated all her energy into the timepiece, unleashing a burst of magic that rippled through the chamber. the room erupted in chaos as the creatures recoiled, and the timepiece exploded with a blinding light. Chloe shielded her eyes, feeling the raw power coursing through her. She didn't know if she could control it, but she had to try. "Red," she yelled, her voice cutting through the tumult. "We need to get out of here." With a final surge of determination, Chloe released the magic, sending a wave of energy that knocked the council members off their feet. The creatures dissolved into wisps of shadow, their hold over the chamber broken. "Now!" Red shouted, rushing toward Chloe as the blinding light enveloped them both. As they were pulled into the depths of the energy, the realization struck: they had managed to thwart the council's immediate plans, but the battle was far from over. The clock was still ticking, and their journey was only just beginning. The blinding light enveloped Red and Chloe, pulling them through the fabric of time and space. When the brilliance faded, they found themselves back in the familiar forest surrounding Auradon, their bodies trembling from the energy surge. Did it work? Chloe asked breathlessly, scanning their surroundings for any signs of danger. The cool air felt different now, charged with the remnants of magic, but they were alive. Red nodded, her gaze shifting to the distant silhouette of the castle. "We're back. But we need to regroup and warn everyone about the council's plans before they can regroup." Chloe inhaled deeply, relief washing over her. "Let's head to the castle and find Lyra. She'll know what to do next." As they made their way through the trees, they felt a sense of urgency building within them. But with each step closer to the castle, Chloe couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss. The forest was unusually quiet, and a chill crept into the air. "Something doesn't feel right," Chloe said, glancing around. "It's too calm." Red frowned, her instincts on high alert. "You think the council made it back before us?" "I don't know," Chloe replied, but unease gnawed at her. "But we need to be cautious." They emerged from the trees and approached the castle gates, where the usual bustle of guards and courtiers had come to a halt. Instead, a tense silence filled the courtyard, with anxious whispers passing among the gathered crowd. "What's going on?" Red asked, striding toward a cluster of guards. One of them, a familiar face from their earlier adventures, turned to them with a grave expression. "The council has infiltrated the castle. They've managed to convince some of our allies that the royal family is no longer fit to rule." "What?" Chloe gasped, the weight of the revelation sinking in. "Who would betray us like that?" Before the guard could respond, a figure stepped forward from the shadows. It was a young man with slick back hair and an air of charm that felt unsettling. "I wouldn't worry too much about that," he said, a smirk playing on his lips. "The real question is why you two are back so soon." "Calvin?" Red asked, her eyes narrowing. "What are you doing here?" Calvin had been one of their allies, a friend who'd pledged loyalty to the kingdom. But now, his demeanor felt twisted, as if he had been tainted by the darkness surrounding the council. "Surprised to see me?" Calvin said, taking a step closer. "I've been busy working on a plan of my own. You see, there's a fine line between loyalty and opportunity." Chloe's heart raced as she felt the weight of betrayal heavy in the air. "You're with the council? After everything we've fought for?" Calvin chuckled, his expression one of amusement. "You think this is about right or wrong? This is about power. And I've chosen the winning side." Red stepped forward, her fists clenched. "You think you can just abandon everything we've worked for? The trust we had?" "Trust is a luxury," Calvin replied, his voice cold. "And right now, I have a choice to make. Join the council and gain influence, or remain loyal to a sinking ship." Chloe felt the bitterness rise in her throat. "You're making a mistake, Calvin. The council only cares about their own gain. They'll turn on you just as easily." "Perhaps," he admitted, "but at least I'll have my chance to shine. You two are just a distraction now." He waved a hand dismissively, as if brushing them aside with the realization that they were facing not just the council but betrayal from within. Chloe and Red exchanged frantic glances. They were at a crossroads, forced into a precarious situation. "Let's get out of here, Red," Chloe urged, her heart pounding in her chest. "We can't let him alert the others." But Calvin smirked, sensing their fear. "Oh, I wouldn't recommend running. The council is already closing in. You're trapped here." Red took a step back, adrenaline surging through her veins. "We'll find a way. We won't let you win." Just then, the castle doors burst open, revealing a group of council members, their expressions predatory as they marched toward the trio. Chloe felt a wave of panic wash over her, the reality of failure crashing down upon her like a tidal wave. "We have to move," Red shouted, grabbing Chloe's arm and pulling her toward the nearest side entrance. Calvin stepped in front of them, blocking their escape. "I won't let you go that easily." Chloe felt the walls closing in. "What are you going to do, Calvin? You'll be betraying your own friends for the council. You know they don't care about you." "They'll care once I'm in power," he replied, his eyes gleaming with ambition. "And you'll be nothing but a memory." With no other option, Red acted impulsively, launching herself at Calvin in a swift motion. But he sidestepped her, and in the chaos, she stumbled forward, losing her balance. "Red!" Chloe yelled, reaching out, but Calvin seized the moment. He grabbed Red's wrist, twisting her arm behind her back, pinning her against the wall. "Let her go!" Chloe cried, desperation clawing at her throat. "Not a chance," Calvin sneered, tightening his grip on Red. "You're going to watch as everything you care about crumbles." As the council members advanced, a harsh reality set in. They had fought so hard to protect Auradon, only to find themselves betrayed by one of their own. The sense of impending doom settled heavily in Chloe's chest, her mind racing for a solution. "Red, think. We can't let them take you." Chloe shouted, trying to formulate a plan amidst the chaos. In a flash of determination, Red managed to twist her body and break free from Calvin's grasp, but it was too late. The council members had circled them, their eyes gleaming with dark intent. "You won't escape this time," the leader of the council said, stepping forward with a malicious grin. "The time for your rebellion is over." Chloe felt a surge of despair wash over her. The hard truth settled in: they had failed to stop the coup, and now they were facing dire consequences. In that moment, as Red and Chloe stood back to back, their resolve hardened. We may have been betrayed, Chloe said through gritted teeth, but we're not giving up. Red nodded, adrenaline coursing through her veins. Not now. Not ever. The battle was far from over. As they prepared to face their enemies, they held on to the hope that even in the depths of betrayal, the fight for Auradon was worth every ounce of their strength. The atmosphere in the castle courtyard felt electric with tension. As Red and Chloe stood back to back, surrounded by council members and their former ally Calvin, a sense of urgency gripped Chloe. The walls of the castle loomed around them, a stark reminder of how close they were to losing everything they had fought for. "Do you think you can escape this time?" the council leader taunted, a smirk curling his lips. "You've already failed once." Chloe's heart raced as she locked eyes with Red, who nodded slightly, silently urging her to stay focused. But as they prepared to face their enemies, an unsettling thought wormed its way into Chloe's mind. "Wait," she said suddenly, her voice cutting through the tension. "If you're here, then who's leading the council?" The leader's smile faltered, a flicker of uncertainty passing over his face. "What do you mean?" Chloe pressed on, determination hardening her resolve. "If you're just one of their members, then who orchestrated all of this? Who is truly behind this coup?" A glimmer of realization ignited in Red's eyes as she sensed the weight of Chloe's words. "You're not the leader, are you?" Red challenged, stepping forward defiantly. "You're just a pawn in someone else's game." The council leader's expression darkened. "Enough. You know nothing of our plans." But Chloe wasn't finished. "No, we know more than you think. The council has been using fear to manipulate everyone. But what if we could expose the truth? What if we could show everyone who's really pulling the strings?" Calvin snorted, regaining his composure. "And who might that be?" "You're grasping at straws. You don't have any evidence." Chloe's mind raced, and suddenly, the pieces began to fall into place. She recalled the conversations they'd overheard, the whispers about a shadowy figure that had been controlling the council's actions from behind the scenes. "It can't be," she murmured, her breath catching in her throat. "What? Who?" Red pressed, urgency in her voice. Chloe took a deep breath, fighting against the wave of doubt that washed over her. "The council's true leader. It's someone from our past, someone we thought we could trust." The realization crashed over her like a wave. "It's Lyra, isn't it? She's been manipulating everything from the beginning." Silence enveloped the courtyard as the weight of her words hung in the air. The council leader's expression shifted, a flicker of panic crossing his face. "That's enough," he shouted, but Chloe could see the cracks forming in their carefully constructed facade. "Think about it," Chloe urged, desperation creeping into her voice. She always knew more than she let on. She's been the one guiding us, and all the while, she's been feeding us misinformation. It all makes sense. Red's expression turned from confusion to anger. Why would she do that? Why would she betray us? Power, Calvin sneered. Some people can't resist it. Lyra is no different. She saw a chance to seize control and decided to cut you loose. Chloe shook her head, grappling with the truth. No. We need to find her. We need to confront her and expose her plan. The council members exchanged nervous glances, their confidence wavering. But the council leader regained his composure, stepping forward menacingly. You think you can just waltz in and confront her? She's already prepared for you. You have no idea what you're up against. Red's fists clenched. We've faced worse odds. We're not afraid of her. As Chloe listened to the escalating conflict, a wave of emotion surged within her. She felt the weight of their mission pressing down on her, the uncertainty of their choices clawing at her conscience. But what if we fail again? What if our actions don't matter? Chloe, Red said, her voice softening. We can't think like that. Every choice we make has consequences. It's why we've come this far. Tears stung Chloe's eyes as she struggled to hold on to her resolve. But we've lost so much already. What if we're just delaying the inevitable? Red took a step closer, her gaze fierce and unwavering. If we don't fight, then we've already lost. We can't let fear dictate our choices. We owe it to everyone to stand up and fight for what's right. Chloe felt her heart race at the conviction in Red's voice. She realized that their journey had already changed them, and in the face of overwhelming odds, they had to choose hope over despair. You're right, she said, determination rekindling within her. We can't give up. We have to confront Lyra. But before they could put their plan into action, Calvin lunged forward, attempting to seize the opportunity while they were distracted. You're too late, he shouted, but Red was faster. She dodged to the side and kicked him, sending him sprawling to the ground. Enough games. Red shouted, her voice ringing with resolve. We're not backing down. We're going after Lyra, and we're going to end this once and for all. Chloe nodded, her fear dissipating as adrenaline surged through her veins. Let's gather our allies and expose her. We can't let her manipulate us any longer. As they turned their backs on the council members, Red glanced back, her eyes blazing with defiance. This isn't over. We'll return, and when we do, you'll wish you never crossed us. Chloe felt a sense of unity bloom between them as they rushed toward the castle entrance, leaving behind the chaos and uncertainty of their encounter. They had made their decision. They would confront the betrayal head-on, and together, they would reclaim Auradon from the clutches of darkness. As they pushed through the doors and stepped into the grand hall, the weight of their choice hung heavily in the air. The battle was far from over, but together, they would face whatever came next, armed with the knowledge of their allies and the resolve to uncover the truth. The air inside the castle crackled with tension as Red and Chloe raced through the grand hall, urgency driving their every step. They had to find Lyra and stop the coup before it could take root. The reality of the council's plan weighed heavily on their shoulders, but the fire in their hearts urged them forward. Where do we start looking for Lyra? Chloe panted, dodging courtiers who gawked at their frantic pace. She could be anywhere. Let's check the royal chambers, Red suggested, her mind racing with possibilities. If she's plotting something, she'll likely want to keep it close to the throne. Just as they rounded a corner, a loud commotion erupted from the courtyard, drawing their attention. The sounds of shouting and clashing metal echoed through the hall, sending a chill down Chloe's spine. "That can't be good," she muttered, glancing back at Red, who nodded in agreement. Without hesitation, they dashed toward the noise, pushing through the double doors that led to the courtyard. What greeted them was chaos. Council members, now fully revealed in their roles, clashed with guards loyal to the royal family. Shouts filled the air, mingled with the clanging of swords and the desperate cries of the innocent caught in the crossfire. "Lyra!" Chloe shouted, scanning the tumult for any sign of their former ally. "We need to find her." But Red's attention was drawn to the chaos unfolding around them. "We can't just stand by. We have to help." Without waiting for a reply, Red dove into the fray, charging toward a group of guards overwhelmed by council members. Chloe hesitated for just a moment, then followed suit, determination fueling her every movement. As they fought side by side, exchanging blows with the council members, the urgency of their mission pulsed in their veins. But amid the clash, a realization struck Chloe: the council had anticipated their every move. It was a trap designed to pull them into the chaos. "Red!" Chloe called out, trying to regain her footing against a particularly relentless council member. "We can't let ourselves get separated. We have to find Lyra and stop this now." "I see her!" Red shouted back, her voice cutting through the chaos. Just beyond the fighting, Chloe spotted Lyra, flanked by a group of council members, a malevolent smile on her face as she reveled in the disorder she had orchestrated. "Let's go," Chloe urged, maneuvering through the fighting bodies, her heart pounding. They pushed their way forward, dodging blades and slipping past fallen soldiers, their eyes fixed on Lyra. But as they drew nearer, the crowd surged in a wave, pushing them apart. Red stumbled, her foot catching on the edge of a broken flagstone, and Chloe reached back to grab her arm. "Stay close." Just as they regained their footing, the council's leader turned, eyes gleaming with malice. "You think you can stop this?" he taunted, brandishing his sword. "It's too late. Get out of our way." Red shouted, but he lunged at them, forcing them to dodge. Chloe's instincts kicked in, and she pushed Red aside just as the blade grazed her arm. "Chloe!" Red exclaimed, concern flickering in her eyes, but there was no time to dwell on the injury. They had to keep moving. "Focus!" Chloe shouted, pain shooting through her arm, but she gritted her teeth and continued to push forward. They were so close to Lyra. She could almost reach out and grab her. With a sudden burst of adrenaline, Red and Chloe leaped forward, weaving through the chaos. But as they reached the edge of the courtyard, they were met with an unexpected obstacle. A barricade of council members blocking their path. "Stop them!" Lyra commanded, her voice slicing through the noise like a blade. "Don't let them reach me. Not this time." Red shouted, determination etched on her face. "We're not backing down." With a fierce battle cry, they surged forward, each one of them determined to break through the line. Chloe could feel her heart racing as she exchanged blows with the council members, adrenaline coursing through her veins. As they fought, Chloe's mind raced with possibilities. They had to find a way to reach Lyra before she could solidify her power. "We need a distraction," she yelled to Red, who nodded in agreement. On it. Red shouted, and with a swift move, she launched herself at a group of council members, using her surroundings to create a diversion. Chloe seized the opportunity and dashed past the chaos toward Lyra, her breath coming in ragged gasps, but just as she thought she could reach her, Calvin emerged from the side, blocking her path with a malicious grin. "You really thought you could stop this?" he taunted, stepping closer. Chloe's heart sank as she realized she had to confront him yet again. "Get out of my way, Calvin. I'm not afraid of you." "Fear isn't the issue here," he replied, his voice low and dangerous. "You've lost. The council is in control now." "No!" Chloe shouted, fury igniting her resolve. "I won't let you win." With a burst of energy, she charged forward, using every ounce of strength to break through Calvin's defenses. But he was quick, sidestepping and grabbing her wrist, attempting to twist her around. Red, noticing Chloe's struggle, launched herself at Calvin. "Let her go," she shouted, her fury boiling over as she delivered a swift kick to his side. Chloe seized the moment, breaking free from his grip and launching herself toward Lyra, who stood just beyond. "Lyra," she yelled, desperation fueling her every move. "This ends now." Lyra turned, surprise flickering across her face before she masked it with cold indifference. "You think you can stop me, Chloe? You're nothing without your precious friends." Chloe squared her shoulders, refusing to back down. "Maybe. But together, we can take you down." Just as she reached for Lyra, the council leader reappeared, ready to strike. "You're not going anywhere," he shouted, raising his sword. In that instant, the world seemed to slow. Chloe felt a surge of energy coursing through her, a familiar magic calling to her from deep within. She took a deep breath, focusing on the warmth blooming in her chest. "Red," she yelled, sensing her partner's presence nearby. "Now!" In a synchronized effort, Red charged at the council leader, her movements fluid and determined. Chloe summoned all the magic she could muster, channeling it into a powerful blast aimed at Lyra. The energy collided, sending a shockwave through the courtyard, knocking everyone off their feet. Chloe stumbled but kept her eyes on Lyra, who was momentarily stunned. "Go!" Red shouted, urging Chloe forward as she continued to fend off the council members. "I'll hold them off." Chloe felt the weight of her choice bearing down on her. She had to confront Lyra and end this once and for all. With every ounce of determination, she surged forward, barreling through the chaos, ready to face the betrayal that threatened to consume them all. As the dust settled around them, Chloe locked eyes with Lyra, the final confrontation looming before her. The coup had begun, but they were ready to fight back, no matter the cost. The battlefield that had once been a vibrant courtyard was now a chaotic scene of shattered dreams and impending doom. Red and Chloe stood back to back, panting, adrenaline coursing through their veins as they faced Lyra and the remnants of the council. Around them, the sounds of battle echoed, but in that moment, a heavy silence fell over them, filled with the weight of an impossible decision. "Chloe," Red said, her voice low and urgent, "we can't keep fighting like this. We need to figure out our next move." Chloe nodded, trying to collect her thoughts amidst the chaos. But then, a chilling realization dawned on her. What if we can't save everyone? What if we can only save one person or one event? What if we have to choose? What do you mean? Red asked, confusion flickering in her eyes. Chloe swallowed hard, trying to articulate the fear gripping her heart. What if we have to choose between stopping the coup and saving someone important from the past? What if our actions now create a ripple that alters everything? Red's expression turned serious. Are you saying we could lose someone like the king or even your mother? Chloe interjected, her voice shaking. Or what if we have to sacrifice the very event that unites Auradon? If we change history, the consequences could be catastrophic. Silence hung between them as they grappled with the implications of their choices. The stakes felt impossibly high. If they saved the celebration, they could secure unity for Auradon, but at what cost? And if they saved a key figure, what would that mean for the future? Chloe, Red said, her voice firm yet pained, what if it comes down to saving my mom? What if we have to decide between her and the kingdom? Chloe's heart sank at the thought. You know I'd never let that happen. But we can't ignore the reality of our situation. The council is already making their move, we need to anticipate their next step. Just then, a cacophony of voices erupted from the shadows. The council members, now rallying under Lyra's command, moved to fortify their position. They were preparing for a final push to gain control over Auradon, and with each passing moment, the time for decision drew nearer. Look! Red shouted, pointing toward the far end of the courtyard, where a group of guards was struggling against a few council members. That's where they're heading. If they reach the castle, we lose everything. Chloe's pulse quickened as she observed the mounting chaos. She knew they had to act quickly. We need to split up, she said, a plan forming in her mind. I'll go after the council members threatening the guards, and you, no. Red interrupted, a fierce determination shining in her eyes. We stick together. If we separate, we risk losing everything. We need to confront Lyra and the council together. A knot tightened in Chloe's stomach as she understood the weight of their dilemma. But if we do that, we might not have time to save anyone. We can't keep fighting if we don't know what we're fighting for. Red hesitated, searching Chloe's face for answers. So what do we do? We can't just stand here and let them take everything from us. I don't know, Chloe admitted, frustration bubbling within her. But we need to decide. It's either stopping the coup or saving a life that could change everything. Tension hung in the air, thick and suffocating. Chloe felt the urgency of their circumstances bearing down on her, each second ticking by like a countdown to their impending doom. Maybe we could find a way to do both, Red suggested, her voice laced with hope. What if we save the moment and then warn whoever we need to protect? There has to be a way. Chloe shook her head. It's not that simple. If we try to change the past too much, we risk unraveling everything. We have to make a choice. As the weight of their decision pressed down on them, the ground shook beneath their feet, a tremor that echoed the turmoil in their hearts. Chloe's mind raced, the images of potential futures swirling around her. The joy of Auradon's unity, the love of family, and the burden of loss intermingled, creating a suffocating haze of uncertainty. "Chloe," Red said, her voice breaking through the fog, "think about it. What would you do if you had to save your family or the kingdom? What choice would you make?" The question struck a chord deep within Chloe, and she closed her eyes, picturing her family, her friends, and everything she had fought for. "I'd do anything to protect them," she whispered, her heart aching. "But what if that means sacrificing something greater? What if it means losing Auradon?" Red's expression softened, the understanding between them deepening. "We can't let fear control our choices. Whatever happens, we face it together." Chloe nodded, her heart swelling with gratitude for Red's unwavering support. "Then we need to decide now. If we don't act, we'll lose everything." Just as they made their choice, Lyra stepped forward, her presence commanding the room. "You think you can decide the fate of Auradon? You're nothing without me." Her voice echoed through the courtyard, filled with contempt. Chloe felt her resolve harden. "We're not backing down. We choose to protect what matters most." "Very well," Lyra sneered, her eyes narrowing. "Then let's see if your choice can save you." As the council members surged forward, ready to initiate their final attack, Chloe and Red steeled themselves for the fight ahead. Whatever consequences lay in their path, they would face them together. They had made their choice, and now it was time to act. With a fierce battle cry, they launched into the fray, their hearts united by the determination to protect what they held dear, ready to confront whatever consequences awaited them. In that moment, they realized the truth: choices shaped destinies, and together, they would forge a path through the chaos, no matter the cost. The courtyard was a battlefield, echoes of clashing steel mingling with the frantic shouts of guards and council members. Red and Chloe stood resolute, their backs against one another, hearts pounding as they prepared to confront Lyra and the council leader. The stakes had never been higher, and they knew they had to disrupt the magic that was fueling the coup. "Chloe, we have to find a way to break whatever spell is keeping this chaos going," Red urged, glancing at the swirling energies surrounding them. "If we can disrupt it, we might have a chance to turn the tide." "I agree, but how?" Chloe replied, her voice steady despite the turmoil around them. "We have to figure out what's anchoring their magic. We can't just attack blindly." The council leader emerged from the fray, his presence commanding and ominous. "You think you can stop this?" he sneered, raising his hands as dark energy crackled between his fingers. "I've worked too hard to let you ruin my plans now." As if in response, the very air around them thickened with tension, the magic swirling like a storm about to unleash its fury. "We're not afraid of you," Red shouted, taking a step forward, her heart racing with determination. With a flick of his wrist, the council leader unleashed a wave of energy that surged toward them. Red instinctively summoned her own magic, the familiar warmth igniting within her, intertwining with Chloe's power as they combined their strengths. The impact was like a thunderclap, shaking the ground beneath them. "Now!" Chloe shouted, directing her focus toward the pulsating magical aura surrounding the council leader. "We need to break his concentration." Red nodded, focusing her energy on creating a shield. The air shimmered as they formed a protective barrier around them. On 3, she said, counting down in her mind. 1, 2, 3. They launched their combined magic at the council leader, a blinding bolt of light that split the air like a spear. The leader staggered back, momentarily thrown off balance as their magic collided with his dark energies. "Fools," he roared, regaining his composure. "You think you can disrupt my plans? You have no idea what you're up against." As he countered with a furious wave of magic, Chloe felt a strange sensation from the pocket watch strapped to her wrist. It vibrated violently, and she glanced down, panic rising in her chest. "Red. The watch. It's malfunctioning." "What?" Red exclaimed, her eyes widening. "We can't lose it now. We need it to return." "I know," Chloe yelled, feeling the watch pulse erratically. "But if we don't stop the council leader, it could trap us here forever. Then we need to end this, now." Red shouted, determination etched across her features. "We have to push through." With renewed resolve, Chloe and Red pooled their magic, channeling it toward the council leader. The air crackled with energy as they focused on breaking the hold of the dark magic that enveloped him. The council leader retaliated, summoning dark tendrils that lashed out toward them. "Enough of this," he bellowed, a vortex of energy swirling around him. "You will regret challenging me." Chloe could feel the heat of his magic as it surged toward them, and in that moment, desperation fueled her. "We need to concentrate on his core. That's where the magic is strongest. Let's do it." Red shouted, her voice filled with determination. Together, they directed their magic toward the heart of the council leader's power, the storm of energy coiling and twisting around them. As their combined magic surged forward, the watch emitted a high-pitched whine, the vibrations intensifying. "It's not stable," Chloe shouted, glancing at the watch, which flickered ominously. "If we don't finish this now, we could lose our only way back." The council leader's eyes narrowed, and with a defiant roar, he unleashed a wave of dark energy, clashing against the brilliance of their light. The two forces met in a dazzling explosion, sending shockwaves through the courtyard. "Hold on!" Red yelled, gripping Chloe's arm as they were momentarily thrown back. The world around them spun, blurring into chaos as they struggled to maintain their footing. "Concentrate!" Chloe cried, her heart pounding as the watch's vibrations intensified. "We have to focus. Picture the light breaking through." As they fought against the tempest, a sudden surge of clarity hit Chloe. "Red, we have to believe in our power. We can't let his darkness consume us." With that thought, they reached deep within themselves, drawing on every ounce of their magic. The air hummed as they concentrated, images of hope and unity flooding their minds. They envisioned Auradon as it should be, vibrant and alive, free from darkness. The council leader staggered back, the force of their combined magic pushing him toward the brink. "You think you can defeat me with mere willpower," he sneered, but the cracks in his confidence were beginning to show. "No." Red shouted, her voice fierce. "We can do this. Together." With a final push, they unleashed their magic as one, a brilliant beam of light aimed directly at the council leader's core. The energy collided with his dark magic, illuminating the courtyard in a blinding flash, but just as it seemed victory was within reach, the pocket watch erupted with energy, sending a shockwave that ricocheted through the courtyard. Chloe felt herself being pulled in every direction as the watch began to destabilize. "No. Not now," she cried, desperately grasping the watch. The mechanism whirred, and the intricate gears began to warp and bend, threatening to shatter under the pressure of the unleashed magic. "Chloe!" Red shouted, panic etched on her face. "We have to keep fighting. We can't let him win. I can't hold the watch." Chloe replied, feeling the magic surge beyond her control. "If it breaks, we'll be trapped." In that moment of chaos, they were left with an impossible choice: keep fighting for their goal or risk everything to stabilize the watch. They had to act fast. "Red, I need you to cover me," Chloe yelled, determination surging through her veins. "I'm going to try to stabilize the watch." "Are you insane?" Red exclaimed, eyes wide. "We can't lose our chance to stop him. We don't have a choice." Chloe shot back, focusing all her energy on the pocket watch. "I have to try." With that, Red charged forward, confronting the council leader as Chloe knelt, hands shaking as she grasped the watch. It vibrated violently, the air around her filled with energy, threatening to consume her. "Hold him off," Chloe cried, her voice fierce as she concentrated on the watch, willing it to stabilize. "I can't do this alone." Red unleashed her magic in a brilliant burst, creating a barrier between Chloe and the council leader, buying her precious moments. "You can do this, Chloe. Just hold on." Chloe closed her eyes, focusing on the rhythm of the watch. She felt the pulse of magic within her, a connection that could either save them or doom them. Come on," she whispered, her heart racing. The pocket watch flickered again, the gears grinding under the strain. "Please work," Chloe cried out, pouring every ounce of her magic into it. She envisioned a timeline where Auradon thrived, a future filled with hope. As she concentrated, a soft glow enveloped the watch, calming the chaos swirling around her. "That's it," Red shouted, her voice echoing through the chaos. "You're doing it." With a final surge of energy, the watch emitted a brilliant flash of light, filling the courtyard and engulfing them in a radiant glow. The council leader roared in anger as the dark magic began to falter, unraveling like threads in a tapestry, but the pocket watch was still unstable, vibrating violently in Chloe's grasp. She felt a rush of panic. "I can't hold it much longer. Just a little longer," Red urged, fending off the council leader as the battle raged around them. The tide was turning, but they needed to finish what they started. With a fierce resolve, Chloe focused once more, channeling her magic through the watch. "You can't trap us in the past," she shouted, pushing against the darkness. "We are the light that will break your hold." As the energy surged forward, the watch responded, its gears whirring to life. The light exploded from within, a wave of brilliance sweeping through the courtyard, shattering the hold of the council leader's dark magic. In that moment, the world around them erupted into light, and Chloe felt herself being drawn into the brilliance. But before she could fully process what was happening, the courtyard faded away, leaving behind only the echo of their battle and the promise of a new dawn. The world around Red and Chloe shifted and twisted like a painting caught in a storm. Colors blended, shapes warped, and sounds morphed into a dissonant symphony of chaos. As the brilliant light of their combined magic enveloped them, the familiar structure of the courtyard melted away, and reality itself began to unravel. "Chloe!" Red shouted, her voice strained against the backdrop of swirling colors. "What's happening?" "It's like the very fabric of time is tearing apart." "I don't know," Chloe cried, fighting to keep her footing as the ground quaked beneath them. "We must have disrupted the timeline too much. It's causing fractures." With each heartbeat, the world warped more violently, making it difficult for them to maintain their sense of reality. Images flashed before their eyes, glimpses of Auradon's past, future, and alternate possibilities blending together in a chaotic montage. A serene celebration turned into scenes of war and despair, followed by fleeting images of hope, laughter, and unity. Chloe felt a sense of dread wash over her. "We need to stabilize the timeline. If we don't, everything we've fought for will be lost." "Focus, Chloe," Red urged, her hands clenched into fists as she steadied herself. "We have to find a way to confront Lyra. If we can defeat her, we might have a chance to repair the damage." As they fought against the disorienting effects of time unraveling around them, the air thickened with an ominous energy, a familiar presence emerging from the chaos. Lyra, now a silhouette of darkness against the kaleidoscope of colors, stood defiantly, her eyes glinting with malice. "You think you can escape your fate?" she taunted, her voice echoing unnaturally. "You're only hastening your own demise. Not if we have anything to say about it." Red shouted, stepping forward, her courage igniting in the face of despair. "You won't get away with this." Lyra laughed, the sound echoing with a chilling resonance. "Fools! Time is not so easily mended. It is a relentless force, and you are mere children playing at being heroes." Chloe could feel the shadows of doubt creeping into her mind, but she shook her head, forcing herself to focus. "We won't let you manipulate time for your own gain." As the unstable time fractures pulsed around them, Red and Chloe felt a surge of urgency. They needed to confront Lyra, to stop her from cementing her control over Auradon's destiny. "We have to fight," Red said, determination lighting her eyes. "We need to harness the energy of this moment." "Right," Chloe agreed, gathering her resolve. They needed to channel the chaotic energy swirling around them into a focused force against Lyra. With a fierce battle cry, Red charged forward, her magic flaring to life. Chloe followed, her heart racing as they combined their powers, weaving threads of light and energy into a brilliant tapestry of hope and strength. They created a protective barrier around themselves, a radiant shield against the dark magic threatening to engulf them. Together, Red shouted, her voice fierce. "We can break her hold." The energy around them surged as they concentrated, channeling the unstable magic into a single, focused beam aimed at Lyra. You will not control the fate of Auradon. Chloe yelled, pouring every ounce of her power into the spell. The beam of light shot forward, colliding with Lyra's dark energy, creating a shockwave that rippled through the fractured landscape. Time twisted and buckled around them as the two forces clashed, light against darkness in an explosive display of magic. Lyra snarled, her form flickering as the light began to push against her. You cannot defeat me. I will rewrite this world as I see fit. But Red and Chloe stood firm, their bond strengthening as they fought against the impending chaos. You're wrong. Red shouted, her voice unwavering. We believe in a future where everyone is united. Your darkness has no place in it. As the clash of magic intensified, the fractures in time seemed to shimmer, threatening to collapse into nothingness. With each pulse, Chloe felt the weight of their choices, the responsibility of their actions reverberating through her very core. Chloe. Red called, her voice breaking through the chaos. Focus on our goal. We have to end this. Chloe nodded, drawing on every ounce of energy within her. She envisioned a future where Auradon thrived, filled with hope and unity, and poured that vision into their spell. Together, we will break this cycle. With a final, united effort, they released their combined magic in a brilliant explosion of light that surged forward, engulfing Lyra in a torrent of energy. The dark figure screeched in fury as the light consumed her, and for a moment, time itself held its breath. Then, with a deafening crack, the dark magic shattered, splintering into 1,000 pieces that dissolved into the air like smoke. The world around them began to stabilize, the swirling colors coalescing into the familiar shapes of Auradon's courtyard once more. But as the chaos subsided, Chloe felt a tremor beneath her feet, the remnants of their battle still echoing through the air. It's not over yet, she gasped, realizing they were still caught in the aftermath of the magic's instability. Look. Red pointed toward the horizon, her eyes wide with fear. The fractures in time are still spreading. Chloe's heart raced as she turned to see fissures appearing in the very fabric of reality, threatening to engulf everything they held dear. They had defeated Lyra, but the damage was done, and now they faced an even greater challenge, mending the fractures they had inadvertently created. We can't let this continue. Chloe shouted, desperation fueling her resolve. We have to find a way to seal the fractures before it's too late. Right. Red agreed, her determination shining through the fear. Let's channel our magic together, one last time. We can heal the timeline. With the remnants of their magic still swirling in the air, they clasped hands, drawing on the strength of their bond. For Auradon, they shouted in unison, focusing their energy toward the fractures, willing them to mend. As the magic surged from their joined hands, the courtyard illuminated in a brilliant light, cascading waves of energy washing over the cracks in time. They felt the power of their shared determination, the belief in a brighter future propelling them forward. Stay strong. Red encouraged, her voice steady as they directed their magic into the fractures. We can do this. Chloe felt the energy pulse around them, a harmony of light and purpose. They could mend the past, reshape the future, but it would take everything they had. Let's finish this, she cried, pouring her heart into their final effort. With one final burst of light, the fractures began to close, sealing the rifts in time and restoring balance to Auradon. Chloe felt a rush of relief as the world around them settled into a peaceful stillness. As the last remnants of chaos faded away, Red and Chloe stood together, breathing heavily, their hearts racing with the weight of what they had accomplished. They had faced darkness and emerged stronger, united in their determination to protect Auradon, but even as the world stabilized around them, Chloe knew that the journey was far from over. They had fought for Auradon, but now they must face the consequences of their choices, and the future that awaited them. The atmosphere crackled with tension as Red and Chloe stood shoulder to shoulder, their hearts pounding in sync. The remnants of their previous battle still lingered, a somber reminder of the chaos they had faced. They could feel the echoes of time swirling around them, a palpable reminder that they were on the brink of a final confrontation. "Are you ready?" Red asked, her voice steady yet laced with urgency. She glanced at Chloe, the trust between them palpable in the charged air. "I am," Chloe replied, meeting her gaze with unwavering determination. They had come too far to turn back now. "Let's finish this once and for all." As they prepared for the inevitable showdown, the shadows lengthened around them, coalescing into a dark figure, the leader of the coup. Lyra emerged, her eyes glowing with malevolence, a twisted smile playing on her lips. "You think you can defeat me after all this?" she mocked, her voice dripping with disdain. "You've merely delayed the inevitable. We're not afraid of you." Red shouted, stepping forward, her hands crackling with energy. "You've already lost." "Have I?" Lyra laughed, the sound chilling in its intensity. "Time is a fickle ally, and I hold its strings. This world will be reshaped in my image, and you will be nothing more than echoes in its history." The air thickened with tension, and Chloe could feel the power of the impending confrontation weighing heavily upon her. They had fought against Lyra's darkness before, but this time, they stood united in their purpose. She turned to Red, their resolve crystallizing. "Together, we can end this. Let's do it." Red agreed, her voice fierce with determination. They clasped hands, their magic intertwining, creating a radiant shield of light around them. Lyra's expression twisted with rage as she summoned her dark magic, tendrils of shadow writhing around her like serpents. "You think your light can extinguish my darkness? You are fools." With a flick of her wrist, she unleashed a torrent of dark energy toward them, but Red and Chloe stood firm, their combined powers rising to meet the oncoming storm. The collision of light and darkness sent shockwaves through the air, a brilliant explosion that illuminated the courtyard. The force of their magic created a barrier that pushed Lyra's shadows back, forcing her to stagger. "Now's our chance." Red shouted, determination etched on her face. "Let's finish her." With renewed resolve, they channeled their magic into a single, concentrated beam of light, targeting Lyra at the center of her dark aura. "For Auradon," they cried, their voices echoing through the chaos. Lyra's eyes widened in disbelief as the beam of light surged forward, striking her with the force of a tidal wave. "No!" she screamed, her voice filled with desperation. "This can't be. I will not be defeated." But as the light enveloped her, the shadows began to dissipate, swirling away like mist in the morning sun. Red and Chloe felt the energy of the moment crackling around them, a crescendo of magic that threatened to reshape everything. But just as victory seemed within reach, the air trembled with instability, time itself buckling under the pressure of their battle. The pocket watch, still strapped to Chloe's wrist, vibrated violently, the gears grinding against one another. "It's starting to reset," Chloe shouted, panic rising in her chest. "We need to hold on." "I can feel it too," Red exclaimed, her eyes darting around the courtyard as the very fabric of reality began to blur and twist. "We have to keep fighting, even if it costs us everything." As Lyra's dark form began to unravel, Chloe felt the tug of time pulling them in different directions. Memories of the past, present, and future collided in a dizzying whirlwind. She grasped Red's hand tighter, refusing to let go. "We can't let her escape. We have to finish this now." With a fierce battle cry, they redirected their magic, pushing against the time resets and the overwhelming power of Lyra. The energy surged between them, a radiant beam piercing the darkness and illuminating the courtyard once more. "Fight with me," Red shouted, her voice unwavering. "We can break this cycle." The light enveloped them, creating a dome of brilliance that pushed back the shadows, forcing Lyra to confront the light head-on. "You think this will end me?" she screeched, desperation etched in her features. "I am eternal. Time bends to my will." But as their magic intensified, Chloe realized the truth of their unity. They were stronger together, their combined magic a force that could not be easily extinguished. "You may have once held the reins of time," she shouted, "but we will rewrite this narrative." The light surged forward, a tidal wave of hope and determination. As it enveloped Lyra completely, a piercing scream erupted from her lips, echoing through the courtyard. The dark aura shattered, splintering into fragments that dissolved into nothingness. But just as they celebrated their victory, the world around them began to fracture once more, the chaos of time resetting itself, threatening to pull them apart. "Chloe!" Red shouted, fear flashing in her eyes. "Hold on." Chloe felt the ground shake beneath them, and the pocket watch pulsed violently, sending a jolt of energy coursing through her. "I can't hold on to both," she gasped, her mind racing. "We have to stabilize this before we lose everything. Focus on the timeline," Red urged, her voice steady even in the face of impending chaos. "We can reshape it. Together." As the light around them began to dim, Chloe closed her eyes, reaching deep within herself to grasp the remnants of their magic. She envisioned a timeline where Auradon was free from darkness, where hope and unity reigned supreme. "For Auradon," she cried, pouring every ounce of her power into the vision. Red joined her, their combined magic exploding in a brilliant burst of energy that illuminated the courtyard once more. They felt the echoes of time ripple around them, the very fabric of reality stretching to accommodate their united will. But as they fought to stabilize the timeline, a deep rumbling echoed in the distance. The consequences of their battle loomed heavy in the air. The fractures in time would not easily mend, and Chloe realized that their victory came at a cost. "We have to make a choice," Chloe shouted, desperation creeping into her voice. "If we stabilize the timeline, we may lose our own connection to this reality. Red's eyes widened as the implications settled in. You mean, we could be lost in time forever? Yes. Chloe cried, feeling the weight of their situation crashing down around her. But we can't let Lyra's darkness win. Auradon needs us. With time fracturing around them, the world shifted violently, and Chloe felt the pull of countless timelines battling for dominance. They had to act fast, or they would be consumed by the chaos they had fought so hard to escape. Whatever happens, we face it together. Red declared, her voice fierce and unwavering. We won't let our sacrifice be in vain. Chloe nodded, steeling herself for the choices they had to make. For Auradon, they shouted in unison, channeling every ounce of their magic into the restoration of time, determined to create a future free from darkness, even if it meant sacrificing their own place within it. As the light engulfed them, reality twisted and contorted, reshaping itself before their very eyes. They felt a profound sense of loss, yet hope blossomed within their hearts. Together, they would forge a new path, one that transcended time itself. The last remnants of darkness faded, and as the brilliant light enveloped them, they understood that they had forged a bond unbreakable by time, a connection that would resonate through the ages. And even if they were lost in the currents of time, they had fought for a brighter Auradon, one where hope and unity would reign supreme. The world shimmered and sparkled around them as Red and Chloe felt the warmth of light enveloping them, the sensations of time resetting vibrating through their bodies. When the brightness faded, they found themselves standing once more in the heart of Auradon, but the air felt different, charged with a sense of profound change. Is it over? Red asked, blinking against the sudden brightness of their surroundings. The courtyard, once familiar, now seemed imbued with a new energy, vibrant and alive in a way they had never seen before. Chloe scanned the area, her heart racing. I think so, but something's not right. Her brow furrowed as she took in the sights of Auradon, a bustling marketplace filled with joyful laughter, vibrant colors, and familiar faces, yet there was an air of uncertainty that clung to the atmosphere. They walked cautiously through the courtyard, noticing small yet significant changes, shops that had never existed, people mingling who had previously been mere whispers in the shadows, and banners celebrating unity and progress where once there had been division. Look. Red pointed toward a large banner that read, "Together as One, Auradon's New Era." It's like they've embraced a completely different vision. It's beautiful, Chloe murmured, a mix of awe and apprehension washing over her. But what does it mean for us? What did we change? As they moved deeper into Auradon, the reality of their actions settled in. They had battled darkness and restored light, but in doing so, they had altered the course of history. The changes in the landscape mirrored the changes within themselves, no longer mere participants in Auradon's tale, but now integral to its future. A group of children rushed past them, laughing and playing together, their joy infectious. Chloe couldn't help but smile, but a pang of nostalgia tugged at her heart. This place feels different, yet it's so alive. Do you think we did this? Red asked, her tone reflective. Did our fight against Lyra really change the fabric of Auradon? Chloe nodded slowly. I think we did. We may have broken the cycle of darkness, but in doing so, we've rewritten Auradon's story." She glanced at Red, a sense of pride swelling within her. "But we have to face the consequences of those changes. We can't just walk away." As they made their way through the bustling streets, they caught snippets of conversation that highlighted the new reality of Auradon: citizens discussing plans for collaboration, students celebrating newfound friendships across previously divided lines, and leaders advocating for a future where unity and diversity thrived. A sense of purpose ignited within Chloe. "We need to guide this new Auradon, help it navigate the changes we've set in motion. We've seen the consequences of division and darkness. Now, we can help foster hope and connection." Red smiled, her eyes sparkling with determination. "You're right. We've faced the worst together, and now we can lead the way to a brighter future. We've earned our place here." But as they continued their exploration, the shadow of their former reality lingered in their minds. They couldn't shake the feeling that not everything was as it seemed. "We need to find out if there are still threats lurking in the shadows," Chloe said, her tone serious. "We can't be complacent." "Agreed," Red replied, her expression fierce. "But we also need to celebrate this moment. We fought hard for it, and we deserve to embrace this new beginning." Chloe nodded, her resolve strengthening. "Let's find a way to bring everyone together. We can organize a celebration to mark this new dawn, to foster unity and connection among all of Auradon's citizens." As they walked toward the town square, the excitement in the air intensified, and they caught glimpses of preparations for a grand celebration. Colors danced across the scene as decorations were hung, and laughter echoed through the streets, creating a tapestry of joy and hope. "Look at that!" Red exclaimed, pointing toward a stage being set up at the heart of the square. "It's perfect. We can use that as a central place to unite everyone." Chloe felt a rush of inspiration. "We can invite key figures from every part of Auradon, the leaders, the citizens, everyone. It's a chance for all of us to share our stories and hopes for the future." As they worked together to organize the celebration, they felt the sense of unity solidifying around them. With each person they spoke to, every connection they fostered, the reality of their new roles in Auradon began to take shape. They were no longer just the heroes of their own story, they were now guardians of a future filled with possibilities. The day of the celebration dawned bright and clear, the sun casting a golden hue over Auradon. Red and Chloe stood side by side on the stage, gazing out at the sea of faces gathered before them. The energy was palpable, a shared hope that resonated through the crowd. Chloe took a deep breath, her heart swelling with pride and excitement. "Welcome, everyone. Today, we celebrate not only our victories but the dawn of a new era in Auradon, a time of unity, collaboration, and hope." Red stepped forward, her voice ringing out with passion. "We fought together against darkness, and now we will build a future where that darkness has no place. Together, we will continue to foster connections, embrace our differences, and create a brighter tomorrow." As the crowd erupted in cheers, Chloe felt a profound sense of belonging wash over her. They had not only changed Auradon's past but had also woven themselves into the very fabric of its future. Together, they would face whatever challenges lay ahead, knowing they had the strength of their bond to guide them. In that moment, surrounded by the laughter and joy of a united Auradon, Red and Chloe understood their purpose. They were more than mere protectors, they were the architects of a new dawn, a legacy built on hope and the promise of a brighter world. The celebration had concluded, but the vibrant echoes of joy and unity lingered in Auradon's air like the sweet scent of blooming flowers. Red and Chloe stood at the edge of the town square, watching the festivities wind down as laughter and music faded into the twilight. The stars began to twinkle overhead, a canvas of possibilities stretching into infinity. "I can't believe we did it," Red said, a smile lighting up her face. "After everything we've been through, it feels surreal to see everyone coming together like this." Chloe nodded, her heart still racing from the excitement of the day. "It's incredible. We not only stopped the coup but also ignited a spark of hope in everyone. But I can't help but wonder what lies ahead for us." Red's expression turned contemplative as she leaned against a nearby tree, her fingers brushing against its rough bark. "We've changed so much, and Auradon has changed with us. It's hard to believe that just a short while ago, everything felt so dark." "Auradon's future looks brighter," Chloe replied, her gaze drifting toward the stars. "But I think we still have lingering shadows. The council we fought against didn't just vanish. Their influence might still be lurking in the corners of our world." "Yeah," Red said, her brow furrowing as she pondered the implications. "Even if Lyra is gone, there could be others who were part of the council, waiting for the right moment to strike." Chloe's heart sank at the thought. They had seen how quickly darkness could spread, how easily hope could be extinguished. "We can't let our guard down. We need to ensure that the unity we've built doesn't crumble under the weight of old influences." As they surveyed the aftermath of the celebration, a sense of purpose blossomed within Chloe. "We should start by investigating any remnants of the council. We need to root out any lingering threats before they can regain power." Red straightened, her determination rekindled. "You're right. If we work together, we can uncover whatever is hiding in the shadows. We can't allow the past to define Auradon's future." Their conversation took on a new energy as they began brainstorming ways to tackle this challenge. They would need allies, supporters who believed in the vision they had fought for, a united Auradon free from the divisions that had once plagued it. "What if we formed a council of our own?" Red suggested, her eyes brightening with the idea. "A group of representatives from all corners of Auradon, dedicated to ensuring that everyone has a voice. We could include people who fought alongside us, leaders from different communities. It could be a powerful way to reinforce the bonds we've created." Chloe nodded, excitement bubbling within her. "That's a brilliant idea. It would show everyone that we're committed to their safety and happiness, and it would create a network of support to address any threats that arise." As they began to flesh out their plans, Chloe's thoughts drifted to the moments they had shared during their journey. Their battles, the revelations, and the deepening trust that had forged their friendship. They had faced insurmountable odds, and now they stood on the cusp of a new beginning. "Do you think we'll always be friends, no matter what?" Chloe asked, her voice softening as she looked at Red. "Of course." Red exclaimed, her enthusiasm infectious. "We've been through so much together. Nothing can tear us apart now." But as she spoke, a flicker of doubt crept into Chloe's mind. What if new challenges arise that test our friendship? The future is unpredictable, and we might be faced with difficult choices. "Whatever happens, we face it together," Red reassured her, her expression earnest. "We've fought for Auradon, and we'll keep fighting for each other. That's what makes our bond strong." A smile tugged at Chloe's lips, a warmth spreading through her chest. "You're right. And I wouldn't want to face any challenges without you by my side." As they continued their conversation, they shared their hopes for the future, dreams of a thriving Auradon where everyone worked together, a place where unity prevailed over division. Yet, amid their optimism, a chilling realization began to seep in. The remnants of the Council's influence were not merely echoes of the past, they could also be whispers of future threats. Later that night, as the stars glittered brightly above Auradon, Red and Chloe sat together in a quiet corner of the town square, the remnants of the celebration slowly fading. The night air was crisp, and a gentle breeze rustled through the trees, carrying with it a sense of serenity. "Promise me we'll keep our eyes open," Chloe said, her tone serious. "We have to be vigilant. Even if the Council is weakened, we can't underestimate their determination." "Absolutely," Red agreed, her expression resolute. "We'll stay alert, and we'll protect Auradon with everything we've got." Their resolve solidified, they fell into a comfortable silence, each lost in their thoughts. Yet, deep down, they both knew that the fight for Auradon was far from over. The shadows of the past may have been temporarily vanquished, but they could still linger, waiting for an opportunity to reclaim their hold. As they gazed at the stars, the realization settled in, their journey was only just beginning. The echoes of the past would continue to shape their futures, and they would have to be prepared for whatever challenges lay ahead. Together, they would face the unknown, determined to build a brighter Auradon, one that thrived on unity, resilience, and the unbreakable bond they had forged through their trials. The road ahead would not be easy, but with their hearts aligned and their spirits unyielding, they were ready to embrace whatever the future held. The dawn broke over Auradon, painting the sky with hues of gold and rose. The light streamed through the windows of the town hall, illuminating the space where Red and Chloe were gathered. Tables were adorned with maps, notes, and vibrant sketches that represented their vision for a united Auradon. Excitement buzzed in the air, fueled by the promise of a fresh start and new beginnings. "I can't believe how far we've come," Chloe remarked, her voice filled with awe as she spread out a detailed map of Auradon. "Just a few weeks ago, we were racing against time to stop a coup, and now we're planning for the future." Red leaned over the table, studying the map with intensity. "It feels like a dream. We have so much potential here, different cultures, communities, all coming together. This is our chance to build something amazing." Chloe nodded, her enthusiasm mirroring Red's. "And we can learn from the past. We won't let division creep back in. With a council representing everyone, we'll ensure that everyone's voice is heard and valued." As they worked together, Chloe felt a sense of warmth blooming in her chest. Their friendship had evolved into something deeper, a partnership forged in the fires of adversity and strengthened by their shared vision for Auradon. They complemented each other perfectly, Red's boldness balancing Chloe's careful planning. "Let's reach out to everyone we met during the celebration," Red suggested, her eyes shining with determination. "They can help us spread the word about the new council and encourage more people to get involved." "Great idea," Chloe replied, feeling the spark of inspiration igniting within her. "And we should also share our journey, how we came together to fight against the council and what we learned along the way. It will inspire others to take action." As they brainstormed, a new energy filled the room. Each idea brought forth a vision of Auradon that was vibrant, hopeful, and full of possibility. They could see it, the bustling marketplaces, children playing together, communities thriving in harmony. This was the future they were fighting for. "Do you think we should plan a series of meetings?" Red asked, tapping her pen against the table thoughtfully. "We can invite representatives from all different backgrounds and come up with a unified agenda." "I love that." Chloe beamed, her excitement palpable. "We can create workshops to facilitate discussions, build connections, and share ideas. Everyone has something to contribute." Just then, a knock interrupted their planning session. The door creaked open, revealing a group of familiar faces, their friends from the celebration, all wearing smiles of encouragement. "We heard about the council," one of them exclaimed, stepping inside. "We want to help." The room filled with laughter and chatter as they all joined in, each person eager to lend their skills and insights. It was a moment of solidarity, a reminder that the bonds they had formed were not limited to just Red and Chloe but extended to all of Auradon's citizens. As the group settled in, they began to outline their goals and dreams for Auradon's future, discussing ways to foster collaboration and create a thriving community. Ideas flowed freely, each person contributing their unique perspective, weaving a tapestry of hope that embraced the essence of Auradon. Amidst the discussions, Red and Chloe exchanged knowing glances, their hearts swelling with pride at the unity blossoming around them. It was as if the challenges they had faced together had laid the groundwork for this new partnership, a network of support that extended far beyond their own friendship. Later that evening, after a day filled with brainstorming and laughter, Red and Chloe found themselves alone once more in the town hall, reflecting on the day's events. "Can you believe this?" Red said, her voice filled with wonder. "We've started something incredible." Chloe nodded, her heart brimming with emotion. "It feels like we're finally living the future we fought for. We're no longer just survivors of the past, we're architects of a new Auradon. Together, we can face anything," Red declared, her eyes sparkling with determination. "I mean, we've already faced a coup. What else could be worse than that?" "Let's hope nothing," Chloe replied with a chuckle. "But even if challenges arise, we know we can tackle them together. We're a team now, partners in every sense." As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm glow over the town, they stepped outside to breathe in the crisp evening air. The streets were alive with the sounds of laughter and celebration, a testament to the bonds they had forged and the unity they had created. But as they stood together, Chloe couldn't shake the feeling that the past still echoed in the shadows, waiting for an opportunity to rear its head once more. "What if remnants of the council still linger?" she asked, her brow furrowed with concern. What if they come back to challenge what we're building? Red placed a reassuring hand on Chloe's shoulder. We'll be ready. We've faced darkness before, and we've learned from it. Whatever happens, we'll face it head-on, just like we always have. Their resolve strengthened. Chloe took a deep breath and gazed up at the stars twinkling in the night sky. Here's to new adventures, she said, her heart soaring with possibilities. And to the unknown challenges that lie ahead. Absolutely, Red agreed, her voice firm. Together, we'll turn every challenge into an opportunity. We've only just begun. With that, they turned to walk into the heart of Auradon, ready to embrace whatever the future held. They were more than just friends, they were partners bound by a shared vision, prepared to face the world together, no matter what echoes of the past lingered on the horizon. The dawn of a new era was upon them, and they would seize it with unwavering courage and hope.